Study session for Monday, February 12th to order. All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag is over here for those who are not in the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begun the tradition, I'd like to start this meeting off by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. We'll be starting this study session off in a moment here. I do want to apologize to people unintentionally, just by the nature of the room. We have our backs to you, but there will be time for us. We'll have our presentations. There will be public comment time too, where everybody will have a chance. So please bear with us. We don't mean to be rude. I am also turning away from the mic, which I'm not supposed to do. So with that, I will hand it over to our interim city manager, Chet.
Well, thank you. My name is Chet Janik. I'm the interim city manager. Just a couple updates. One is on the strategic planning process that Manager Vogel gave you an update. The deadline is March 1st. I'm the contact person for people interested in submitting proposals. And we had about 5 or 6 calls already, so I think there'll be significant interest in that, and we're hoping to get some good proposals. Next topic is the assistant city manager job has been posted. The deadline is February 21st, and there's over 50 applicants so far, so there's a lot of interest in that position. This evening through Wednesday, the Fish Pass Advisory Board has been meeting, about 35 people, and they kicked off this evening, and they're meeting all day tomorrow and Wednesday, and they're broken in 2 groups. One is a scientific group, but the one is the core group with the details of it, and they're meeting at the Indigo for the next 2.5 days. And then you probably saw in the paper that Grand Traverse County received their facilities master plan. It's about 500 pages. If implemented, it's over $200 million. A lot of that will impact the city, and so we're looking at some time in the near future to have maybe a joint presentation or have the consultants come and report to the city commission, because a lot of what is proposed in there would impact the city also. So we're looking at some dates that that can be accomplished sooner versus later.
Great.
Are the microphones on? The microphones don't project in this room, so we're just going to ask everybody up here to please speak audibly so that folks throughout the audience can hear you. They are broadcasting online and to folks at home, but I'm sorry that they don't actually project in the room.
Okay, and I will hand this back now also to City Clerk. I unintentionally skipped roll call, so if you want to do that with the announcements from the City Clerk, that would be great.
Sure. And good evening, Commissioner Anderson. Here. Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell.
Here.
Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson. And Mayor Shamrow.
Here.
All right, and I'll have some announcements for this week, the week of February 12th. We have a few meetings scheduled, and those include the DDA Governance Committee meeting. That'll be on Tuesday, February 13th at 5 p.m. in the committee room, which is on the 2nd floor of the Governmental Center. The Traverse City Light and Power Board will meet on Tuesday, February 13th at 5:15 p.m. in the Commission Chambers on the 2nd floor of the Governmental Center. The DDA Board's regular meeting will be this Friday, February 16th at 9 a.m. in the Commission Chambers. And then just a couple of community updates. This is the 2nd year of the City Academy, where we're providing an opportunity for various city residents to get more familiar with city operations and allow us to gain some of their thoughts and perspective on how programs are shaped. And applications for the 2024 City Academy are now available through February 29th. And we encourage city residents to apply to receive consideration for that behind-the-scenes series of workshops on city government. And you can learn more at traversitymi.gov. Also, I mentioned before that new this year, we are having across the state of Michigan early in-person voting that begins this Saturday, February 17th, and will go through Sunday, February 25th. And early voting every day for city residents will be in the cafeteria in the lower level of the Governmental Center. And the hours for all 9 of those days are from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then also, please be aware that going forward, Planning Commission meetings will now take place at 6 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. So Planning Commission has a new regular meeting time of 6 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. Also, as MDOT begins to prepare to begin the major construction project of reconstructing Grandview Parkway in mid-March, they're going to host a community open house Regarding that, it's on Tuesday, February 20th, and that's from 4 to 6 p.m. at MDOT's Traverse City Service Center office located at 2084 US 31. And then again, I just want to remind everyone up here to please speak as audibly as you can. I think for future meetings like this, we'll be in the commission chambers because of that very issue, for one. And then lastly, I just want to share that, of course, the city is hiring for a number of full-time, part-time, and also seasonal positions. And we ask for folks to go to traversitymi.gov/jobs to hear or learn more about those opportunities. And that's all that I've got.
Great, thank you for doing that 1-2 combo there for us. And with that, we'll start with our first topic of discussion, and I will hand this over to Mr. Janik for a discussion of our update thus far on the Memorandum of Understanding in our housing.
Thank you. It does feel odd having my back turned, so I'll try to be in this angle, make sure this works here. My name is Chet Janik. I'm the interim city manager. I've been here for about 5 weeks, but I'm local. Spent most of my life in this area, so I certainly understand the challenging situation here. Couple of things. There's been a lot of press lately about this issue and some misperceptions. I know City Manager Vogel has received some phone calls, emails. I have too. Before we go to the presentation, just want to talk about a couple of myths that were out there. One myth that we keep hearing, that this is a done deal and the process has been decided behind closed doors and so forth, and that's not the case at all. The city actually is the one that contacted Safe Harbor last year. The former city manager contacted the staff of Safe Harbor to see what can be done about the situation. This is not coming from Safe Harbor, and I want to make that clear. There also is agreement from Safe Harbor, and I think the people on the committee, that if we just expand the hours, that does not solve the problem. Everyone knows this is a long-term problem. There are no simple answers. It may be one of the issues to resolve, but it's not going to solve the problem. And also, this is just a memorandum of understanding to have dialogue. Just as the city commission has only approved the memorandum, Safe Harbor Board has done the same thing. The Safe Harbor Board actually has not had discussions about expanding hour or services or days. That will happen later. But just as you are talking just about the memorandum, how to go forward, Safe Harbor is doing the same process. So I just want to clear that up. And a couple of people have asked, including Commissioner Warner, about the occupancy rates. So I called this afternoon, and I apologize not having more details, but I know you just emailed me late this afternoon. But for 23-24 year, they are averaging about 80 to 85 people per night, compared to 22-23 when it was 65 to 70, and 20-21-22 was also 65 to 70. So their numbers have gone up this year. I know there's been a lot of comments made, a lot of emotions, and as we go through this, just want to think of a quote from Abraham Lincoln, that we all need to appeal to the better angels of our nature. This is a very difficult task. There are no easy solutions. I think we all need to work together. I've only been here 5 weeks on an interim basis, but I've sat in a couple of meetings, and I'm so impressed with all the work that is going into this. And I appreciate all the comments being made in the public, too. I sat through the meetings last month. Last week, I went to the Grand Traverse County meeting last week, and there were comments also. And I think we all just need to work together to come up with a solution here. So let me go through this PowerPoint, assuming the, by the way, I want to thank the city staff for coming up with this. This is very well done. And I thought I'd do is go over the whole presentation before you ask questions, because you may have questions that are answered in other slides. So if it's okay with the city commissioners, we'll go through the presentation, and then we'll ask for questions. So once again, I think the key is this is led by the city, and it was started by the city in response to the challenges of the homelessness. And I think the key point, I'm not going to read this because you can read it, and copy of it is online for the people in the audience. But we all need to look at a compassionate approach. I think that's the key, and that is our number one focus, that we need to be compassionate when you look at this very challenging situation. There is a sense of urgency. A number of homeless has gone up. They're available. You can see them on the streets. The Pine situation has been a challenging situation, which we'll talk about later. And the goal, and that's the goal also from Safe Harbor, is the goal for homeless is to be rare, brief, and a one-time emergency situation. We realize that this is not a long-term solution. And how can we work with other groups of agencies to kind of come up with a joint solution to this? Several people have asked the question about homelessness and where they're from. From a survey done, 97% of the people claim they're from this area. Now, how that is defined can be up to debate, but when they were asked where they consider home, they say Traverse City. Okay, the purpose of the MOU is just to have dialogue about how different agencies, different organizations can work together. Kind of a three-pronged approach, and they're listed here. Develop a proposed plan to keep Safe Harbor open year-round overnight shelter for 2024. Develop cost estimates, funding plans, and operational plans. And develop proposed roles and responsibilities and memos of understanding for different agencies. This struck me last week when I was at a meeting, and I didn't think about this. Actually, my wife volunteers at Safe Harbor, but at the meeting I was at last week, they talked about it's a major effort even if they wish to stay open beyond their normal date in the spring. They have a lot of volunteers that already have made plans for the summer months. They have staff people that are making plans for the summer months. So it's not as simple as just turning on the lights and say, we're going to be open. So a lot of planning has to go effect if they will be open beyond their spring dates. Okay, why did the city approach Safe Harbor? And I talked about, and this is key, the city did approach Safe Harbor. City staff, residents, many of you have seen what has happened in the last year, and the city was trying to be proactive and come up with a solution, work with partners, work with different agencies to come up with a plans for 2024. And that's what the process is. And the city commission, as you know, has approved the MOU, and this is the next step to have this dialogue and give us direction how to go forward. And here are some of the reasons that Safe Harbor was selected. They do have a building, it's cost effective, no need to purchase land. They are in operation. No other partners has the staff or the experience. And I believe, and I wasn't part of it, but other agencies were identified, there was dialogue, but Safe Harbor is the only one that came forward and said they may be interested in expanding services. Okay, Safe Harbor background, for those of you that don't know, it was established in 2017. There was a special land use permit issued in 2015 that allowed emergency shelter from October 15th through May 15th. The current operation dates are October 15th through April 30th. And the hours are 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. There was an amendment in 2019 that basically changed some of the conditions, and the length of the operation has to be approved by the City Commission. So that's just a brief history of Safe Harbor. Community concerns, and I think this is vital. We all understand this is a major issue. We understand there are major challenges with this. I've heard the comments from people in the Bourbon neighborhood, from other neighborhoods, from the library. We take those very seriously. But these are the questions that we pose, and we certainly respect that this does have an impact on family, on kids, on the neighborhoods, and the businesses. But so some of the ones that we say that have to be addressed, is this a year-round solution? And the answer is no. This is not a year-round solution. It may be one piece of the puzzle, but it does not solve the homeless problem. Can the hours of operation be adjusted? Quite a few people ask that, and that's a possibility because the time they are closing is about the time kids are going to school and so forth. And can something be done to maybe stagger those hours, to move the hours later so they're not conflicting with kids and the school buses and people going to work? Impact on the library. I believe the library director is here. she estimated the cost is 40 to 45,000 just for security purposes. So that's a very legitimate. The cleanliness on private and public property has to be addressed. Law enforcement, we'll talk about law enforcement a little further, and the police chief here will address some of that. The impact on local businesses, we realize that's a legitimate concern, and how do we go forward? And right now, as I understand, there's only one daytime shelter in Traverse City. They operate on a grant, a 2-year grant that may be expiring next year. So that issue has to be addressed also. Where do these people go once the shelter is closed in the morning? Continuum of care, this is the key. Everyone who's working on this understands this is not a simple solution. So there has to be comprehensive support, prevention, intervention, seamless transition to a different type of housing, and collaboration with all the different agencies in this area. Long-term goals, community outreach court. Now, I did not know what that meant, so we do have a city attorney here. And could you just give a brief overview what that is?
Sure. So community, I'm probably not supposed to touch this. Community outreach court is similar to like sobriety court. It's an alternative court that can be established. It was established in Grand Traverse County several years ago. And then during COVID, it was one of those things, it was on a grant, and it was one of those things that sort of went by the wayside. There's discussions right now currently ongoing to see if we can revive that. But basically what it does is that it streamlines folks that qualify, which would mean nonviolent offenses, and there are other criteria, into an alternative court that offers, instead of just strictly a prosecution, it's a collaborative approach between the court, the prosecutor, the defense bar, and the defendants to come up with a plan for what that individual might need to exit homelessness. And so an example would be you come up with a plan if a certain person needs treatment, needs help getting their license back. A lot of people that are experiencing homelessness don't have all of their paperwork in order. They need help with that. And so there would be a plan created and then a certain timeline associated with the plan. And sort of the deal is if you complete your plan within a certain amount of months or certain timeline, then the court has the ability to then dismiss your tickets, your fines, maybe you have warrants that can be expunged and things like that. So it's a more proactive approach to getting folks connected with the services that they might need, rather than just, sort of throwing them in jail and locking, throwing away the key, or having fines and warrants just stack up on folks that have no ability to pay those to begin with. And so it's sort of similar also to QRT, which you will hear about a little bit later, is that it's a team approach, and those service providers and entities in the community that provide those services and that help with those different issues are at the table to help kind of shepherd along the folks that need that.
Thank you. I know most people did not know what that term meant, so thank you for explaining that. Aligned with the coalition campaign, one of the signers on the MOU is the Coalition End Homelessness, and they have a goal to end chronic homelessness by 2028. So it's an ambitious 5-year plan. They're working on it, have been working on it, and I'm sure we felt that this would be part of the city's long-term plan also. Another option, initiative that we talked about, is a resolution to extend the emergency temporary shelter operations through October 14th of this year, 2024, to deal with the issue this summer. Develop an agreement with Safe Harbor and the city to allow it to stay open through the summer, and then obviously the funding source has to be resolved. There is a new collaboration with Community Mental Health in Grand Traverse County. They hope to open a crisis center by December of '24. There's been dialogue with them, how they can partner with this and address this, because they see many of the same patients, many of the same issues that the city and Safe Harbor is dealing with. So dialogue has been occurring on that project. And then long-term housing, supportive housing, and there are some projects that already have started, which you'll see some numbers here shortly. Okay, potential options. For 2024, we came up with 3 options. One is this city adopt a new special use plan that allows it to stay open year-round. Option 2 is come up with an agreement only for summer of 2024 that would go through October. And 3, unfortunately, if there is no agreement, the problem's not going to away. It's still going to be here. So what do we do with the homelessness in the spring and summer if there is no agreement and if there's no place for them to go? So that's the 3 options that were discussed. Correction, just some numbers here. As you know, in 2015, the city approved a special land use permit for Safe Harbor. As of this year, there are 498 inclusive housing units approved through pilots. And I just want to make sure everyone knows what that means. That means based on income. That's what inclusive housing means. Of those 498, 35 are for permanent supportive housing. That is for the chronically homeless. And there's 12 more that are in the process of being developed. So that's kind of an update on what is happening from a long-term perspective to create housing options. Correction, the police chief is here. And Chief Richmond, would you like to address these? Because I know there's a lot of questions about this and what your staff is doing. And if you don't mind coming up here and talk about the next 2 slides so everyone can hear you.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Matt Richmond, Police Chief for the Traverse City Police Department. Thank you for showing up. This is a very complex community issue. Your attendance here shows that. This is a compassionate and caring community here. So some of the ways that we've been dealing with this is through our community policing philosophies, and basically that's implementing strategies that rely on partnerships, community partnerships, and problem solving. This cannot be done alone. We cannot address this situation by ourselves, the commission. It has to be really a community effort. One of the ways we did that is through a grant. We hired the department's first police social worker, Jen Holm, who is here today. I may have her come up because I won't do this justice, the QRT, but in 2022, we applied for a COSUP grant, which is a comprehensive opiate stimulant substance use program through the state of Michigan, and a emerging needs grant through the Rotary Charity. We hired a police social worker, and then we also have a dedicated community policing officer that was assigned to the North Boardman area, which kind of encompasses Safe Harbor, Boardman neighborhood, Hall Park, and the library. One of the big issues that we saw was an increase in call volume through around Safe Harbor, Hall Park, and the library, along with some other partners in the community, Jubilee, the church, Safe Harbor. We were also able to get a day shelter, which reduced calls for service in those areas, especially for the library. In the wintertime, when Safe Harbor would close at 8 a.m., those experiencing homelessness would have to leave the shelter, and it being cold out, they would go to the public facility there at the library to warm up. And it sometimes, cause a disturbance, which would mean we were called. The QRT partners with community service agencies. Right now, we have 47 partnerships through our QRT. The initial and traditional QRT is a response to opiate overdoses. We've taken that one step further and addressed a program that encompasses homelessness, mental health, and substance abuse. A lot of times, those experiencing homelessness also have mental health issues and substance use disorders. So with that, Jen Holm would like to come up here and explain exactly what the QRT is and how they are referred to the QRT and what the there is.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Commission. Thank you, everybody here. You care, and you're here, and I think that puts us all on the same side. And so I am glad to be here and tell you a little bit more about what I do. The Quick Response Team, or QRT, is designed to support the vulnerable individuals in our community. We have had several referrals. We have had 247 referrals to date. 181 of those are eligible. So that means that they live in the city limits and they are experiencing at least 2 out of 3 crises related to mental health, substance use, and or homelessness. So 2 out of 3. In fact, 88% of our folks who are eligible are experiencing crises related to homelessness. So we are definitely tackling the vulnerable population and trying to support them. What that looks like, we have safely relocated 18 individuals. This is people who maybe came up here for treatment, employment, relationships, but for whatever reason, they found themselves without resources. And so we were able to get them reconnected, relocated, back with family, and things like that. And we're very grateful for our partners who have helped in that as well. Over 50% of our individuals have engaged with treatment. So they have gotten some treatment for substance use or mental health, or they have received housing. We have had about 41% of those remain engaged with services, including there are the folks who were housed in 2023, 91% of them remained housed. So the folks who are getting housing are staying there, and in terms of what we're seeing. We are seeing 10% more individuals experiencing homelessness in 2024 in the QRT compared to 2023 numbers at this time. So that is an increase. We have had, in terms of law enforcement calls, since referral, almost 50% of folks have had no calls, no repeat calls for law enforcement. So they can be referred from any of our agencies, including our largest referral source, which is the police, but also any of our community partners, or they can self-refer as well. So those folks are not, some of them are not having repeat calls for service. We have also, we do have 47 partners in the community that we're working with. Most notably, that is the Goodwill, Northern Michigan, Safe Harbor, Northwest Michigan Supportive Housing, Addiction Treatment Services, Northern Lakes Community Mental Health, the Traverse Health Clinic, and the Jail Social Worker. And those partners collaborate about the QRT participants. When a person becomes a participant, it is a voluntary program, and they sign paperwork for us to be able to coordinate their care. What that means is we discuss their care, where they're at, what they need, and how we can hopefully reduce calls for law enforcement on this vulnerable population.
As a result of some of the positive things that we've seen through the implementation of the police social worker and the community police officer in the North Boardman, we want to continue that. This year, when Safe Harbor closed down, that North Boardman officer oftentimes was in the Pines, where a large amount of those experiencing homeless go to during the summer. The numbers were 75 to 80 people living in the Pines this summer. Some of those individuals, again, suffered from mental health and substance abuse. Police social worker would go in there. On Fridays, we had the Traverse Health Clinic in Munson would go in there and provide healthcare services, community outreach through Goodwill, the Coalition to End Homelessness were all back there providing services for those. Not a surprise that our highest call volumes are in the areas of the Pines and Safe Harbor. They are consistently in the top 10 locations that we respond to each year. some comparative data from the North Boardman in January through April of 2022. Calls to service at the library were 96 calls. In 2023, from January to April, they were 45 calls. So there was a drastic reduction in calls for service. Hall Park in 2022 was 60 calls for service, 2023, 39. So with that data, what I would like to do is add another officer to be part of the QRT. That North Boardman officer is part of that QRT and address Central Neighborhood and the Pines. We see the numbers, we see the positive outlook, we've seen the community partners that have partnered with us. Every 3 weeks, we have a meeting at the Law Enforcement Center where there's on average probably 20 different community service providers in one room. In my 20 years here, I have never seen that happen. They have been here for 20 years, but they were operating under a silo or their own mission statement and really not coming together as a whole to address the situation. As a whole, we can make a difference, whether it's the service providers or the community at large. I understand your concerns about Safe Harbor. I understand the concerns of Central Neighborhood about the Pines. These are things that we're looking to address. Right now, we're having difficulties because we're 3 officers down, and we're trying to address that with recruitment efforts. That's not because it's Traverse City, that's nationwide. That's probably every industry is having a recruiting crisis. So right now, our North Boardman Community Police Officer, we have one assigned, Krista Frydzinski. However, she is not dedicated 24/7 to that position. She is still tied to the road patrol. So at this point, once we get those individuals and once we get those 3 opening positions filled, we will dedicate that officer, and hopefully we can add another officer to address those other areas and work as a team.
Thank you. So obviously, as we talked about, this is not a problem the city can solve by itself. We need additional partnerships. We need dialogue. We are working as a group. We're looking at different options. Any suggestions people have in the audience, would be glad to respond to those ideas, suggestions. As we pointed out, this is a major problem. It impacts everybody. It impacts the neighborhood. It impacts the businesses. It impacts children. Impacts city operations, as you have heard. And so the key is that we all work together to try to find a solution to this very challenging problem. At that point, that's in the presentation. I know I kind of went through it fast, but we wanted to have dialogue with all of you, and we need some directions how to go forward with this. Because it already is, today's February 12th. If the decision is to have Safe Harbor be open during the summer as a emergency situation, those decisions need to be made probably by mid-March, so the staff can be geared up and so the volunteers can be in place. I didn't realize that till last week when I was at a meeting when they talked about how a challenge it is, because they have staff people that have made commitments. They're normally working during the winter months. They have a lot of volunteers, but those people have lives and they have other commitments during the summer. So the decision is going to be made to go forward, even on an emergency temporary basis. Those decisions, those dialogues need to take place fairly soon. So let me stop there. And Mayor, would you like to open up the question from
Sure, yeah,
commissioners here?
I'd like for commissioners to open up with questions first if they have any.
And we have some people in the audience who are part of this, so if I can answer, maybe someone else can help.
Yeah, and we'll bring up the guests, and then also there will be public
yeah,
comment.
at the
Kind of
end.
structure that we'll ask first, and then we'll open up for public comment for study session. That's usually how it works. So thank you. I know we've got a lot of newer members to our audience. I just want to keep you all along with us through this process. Do we have any questions here? Start. Heather?
Yeah, I have a question. Well, that's not the first page. The first page of this
Go back.
presentation has I believe, a photo from the Pines. Is there a plan to shut down the Pines this summer?
Police chief, would you like to?
I can speak to that
Okay,
as well.
maybe, okay.
So there are several decisions out of different circuits in the United States. Some out of the Ninth Circuit, 10th Circuit, and the Sixth Circuit, which is our circuit, which address that. And they have raised the issue, and courts have come out with decisions that indicate that if folks don't have any place to go, you cannot, without violating their constitutional rights, disallow them or criminalize them staying on a public piece of property. And so that is a very complex issue to what we're dealing with here. So what I'm saying is that if the city were to just go into the Pines and just say, we're clearing out, everyone has to leave, find somewhere else to go, that we would be running a very real risk of having a lawsuit come to the city and saying, you've just violated a whole bunch of people's constitutional rights because they don't have anywhere to go. And so that is probably part of the impetus of trying to come up with a solution of where do folks go. Now, does that mean that we don't enforce behaviors? No. We've been enforcing behaviors all along on destruction of property and fires and all different sorts of things. And that leads into the discussion of homeless court as well, because if someone gets found responsible of destroying a tree in the Pines and they get a fine and they don't have any money to pay the fine, then where does that really lead, right? So it's probably a better idea to get them some resources to help them out of that situation. But that's a different issue. So it's not so much an option to just clear out the Pines and say that, you know, the problem is solved. Folks have to have an alternative. And if they don't, then the city is just sort of taking that liability onto itself.
Jack, you had your hand up.
I first wanted to say thank you to the people who are involved in the QRT program. I not only am impressed by the results, but I appreciate the tracking of data so that we know exactly how successful it is. I would like to know the status of Grand Traverse County's participation. I think when we first heard about this memorandum of understanding, we hoped that it would be a regional solution finding group. And I think that decision on the part of the county is still pending. And I
Yeah.
wondered if there's any update on that, or
Sure.
if there are other local bodies that we could be working with beyond just our own county or into the townships.
I attended their meeting last Wednesday when they talked about it. They voted 7-2 to have a special study session to discuss the MOU. I checked this morning, and as of this morning, they have not set a date yet. So they're still in discussion about having a study session at what level, and will they participate in the MOU. They hope to do that sooner versus later, though. So hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, they'll have that study session.
Yeah, to follow up on Commissioner Shaw's question, the way I was hearing it, but because what I wanted to hear, I think, is if Safe Harbor is open through the summer, is there a plan by the city to clear out the Pines? Because then we do have a place to send people. The follow-up, I see you're shaking your head, but not everybody is eligible to be at Safe Harbor. Families can't be at Safe Harbor. People that have been kicked out of Safe Harbor can't be there. There's people that for conviction reasons are not allowed to be there. So I don't see that it's realistic that we're, in the short to medium term, emptying the Pines.
Right. So, and that's a good finer point to put on it. I think that, like most of what we're talking about with this issue, it's all connected. And it's like a spider web. Everything affects the other thing, right? So if Safe Harbor is open and they have enough room for everybody and everybody can get in, then right, it's feasible, we can clear out the Pines. If not, which is probably not the case, then it still is the intention of all of the partners, I think. I don't want to speak for everyone, but we've talked about internally to make sure that we can shrink down the pines and get a better handle on the area and how large it is and what's going on back there. And I think certainly making a smaller area, I think Chief can talk about what that might do to help the situation.
So based on those,
Can you come to the podium? Thank you.
so based on the decisions that the city attorney mentioned, if we are able to clear out the pines, then we will do that. If not, we will enforce other city ordinances that we can do. There are many that are on the books that we could enforce. Now, that doesn't mean we go out every single day looking to cite individuals in the pines. Just looking at our records right now, we wrote 4 civil infraction or city ordinance tickets in the pines. We give a lot of warnings. A lot of the individuals comply with those warnings and do what we ask. We're not trying to pick on them, or we're just trying to make sure that they are safe, that our community members that utilize the park, walk down the sidewalks along the pines, or walk down the safe route to kids or school that's on the south end of that are safe. So we have a lot of discretion, and as long as they comply with those warnings, that's it. If they don't, then we will enforce the ordinance. Enforcement has to be part of the solution, but it's not the only part of it.
Can I ask a follow-up really quick on that? So to kind of piggyback on Commissioner Warner's question and what Lauren has mentioned about the potential changes at the courts, if there are people who cannot be moved to the shelter, and as we're dealing with a smaller footprint at the Pines, and the enforcement aspect, if this change happens, the enforcement aspect then becomes another on route to, or off ramp onto getting treatment and service help versus just punishment and fines, correct?
Correct. That's
Correct.
the community outreach court, in lieu of fines and costs, going to jail. It's basically a program. You're assigned, and if you comply with the steps within the program, get the services that are outlined there, you graduate from the program. And in lieu of that, or because of that, your fines and costs are waived. So
And
it's
if
a
you
structured
don't, then
program.
enforcement is, and fines and penalties in jail are still available.
Go ahead, Mike.
So I have a question about one of the current on-ramps, which is the QRT. You mentioned that has been grant funded. And as we know, budget documents are values documents. If you want to see what we believe in and what we stand for, look at what we're spending our money on. Is there a plan for, in our budget, to permanently fund the QRT, another social worker, another police officer, and to provide the resources that we need to give these wraparound services in collaboration with nonprofits and other community organizations?
So it's my understanding that the position is budgeted right now with the anticipation that it's reimbursed through. This is budget season. We are going into that and that'll be one of my priorities, to make sure that home does not go anywhere. Mm-hmm. The partnerships that we've developed, talking with the county and the new sheriff, Mike Shea, there's talk of trying to expand the QRT across the city boundary. Because right now, they are not eligible for the QRT if they live in Garfield Township. And we want to support those individuals too, because there is crossover between the city and the county. And that's very serious talks about that happening. Working with community mental health and addiction treatment, crisis mobile, having social workers within our cars. They can help de-escalate some of those. So yes, that is a priority to make sure that those are.
One of my questions had to do with funding too, so I'm yet again going to piggyback on. Sorry.
And just so people know, the budget memo for next year went out last week, so we're at the beginning of that process. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of dialogue about that.
Well, and Preet, what I was going to mention and / ask about is previously as, you know, again, a lot of this stuff happens in bits and pieces, and if you're not up here every week trying to study the packets, it can be very easy to not see these pieces or connect them. But we've been dealing with opioid legislation as a city and filed for that to get funding from the issues that have been caused in the community from the opioid crisis, as well as we have talked previously about the incoming funds from cannabis being in part used to help with some of these issues of housing and homelessness in our community. And so, yes, it's a different commission every time. There's different budget discussions. I think Commissioner Warner's been through some of those conversations, and I think maybe even Nye and Mitch through the last iteration of the commission. But I just wanted you to maybe talk a little bit really quickly, Lauren, about some of those that are out there. They're not committed already 100%. Some do have ties. So could you talk a little bit about that, Lauren?
Sure. So the opioid, the city's participating in the opioid litigation that's ongoing right now. There have been a couple of settlements already that have come through, and those get divvied up between all of the plaintiffs in that litigation. It's similar to back in the day with the tobacco litigation, if anybody recalls back to that or to the movies that were about it. And so there should be funds that continue to trickle in from that litigation. And those are restricted to dealing basically with the effects of the opioid crisis on the municipality. Be that as it may, the connection to this issue, to what we're talking about tonight, is pretty well connected. So it's probably a safe bet that we can use opioid money to deal with this. Marijuana, cannabis money, you probably know the city authorized for recreational cannabis to be sold. That is taxed, and the state then doles out that tax money to all of the municipalities that allow for that sale within their boundaries every year. It's based on how many shops are allowed in the municipality and exist there. And so we're estimating this year it's probably going to be around $800,000. Those come out in the spring, and we don't know for sure because we don't know until the state collects all the money and does the math what we're going to get. But that's based on what was doled out last year, and the number that we have in the city. So, you know, we can't always bank on that because it will fluctuate every year. But we're hoping that, and those are unrestricted funds. They just go in the general fund, and the city can choose to do with them whatever you would like to do with them.
Thank you.
We have been in front of the Open Task Force, presented the QRT along with the sheriff, put out a proposal. Sheriff and I are still working on fix of that, and so that is one we've already reached out to. The meeting I was in, they kind of on the priorities of that, paper on the wall with all the different things that were discussed. There's a positive. Can't guarantee anything, but we have been in front.
It's good news. Thank you. Other questions from commissioners? Go ahead, Mitch.
Yes, for Chief. You mentioned the percentage of call volume that's related to the Pines or to Safe Harbor. Do you think that that is representative of overall issues of homelessness or a proxy for criminal activity at large? Or do you think that that's driven in part but because you have more officers in those areas and more people are aware of potential issues with homelessness and are looking for them?
It's probably a combination of both. So our calls for service last year, of the top 10, we responded 195 times to the Pines, 181 to Safe Harbor, 559 to the library, 141 to 1200 block of South Division, and 97 to Hannah Street out of 14,000 calls. That may be a small percentage. Those are the top 10 locations that we're responding to. That's a consistent. Now, seasons when Safe Harbor's there, some of the businesses around there, call volume. 501 East 8th Street. Winter months. call volume is up. Similar with the Pines, Tom's 14th, 7-Eleven, laundry. Not just tied to Pines or Safe Harbor, surrounding area. Here's some of the numbers that we've shown with the QRT, also the community policing officers, some of those numbers down at Hall Park, Safe Harbor, where the numbers have gone up from last year to this year. Pines, 1,200 South Division. There's a direct correlation.
And as a follow-up, call volume is one set of data, but maybe you have this, maybe you don't. Do you have any breakdown on how many of those calls are indicative of actual criminal behavior or of a need to intervene, or is it somebody sees somebody that's not doing anything illegal or harmful, but they think it's odd and they're calling police about it?
I don't have the breakdown of the cases, which would mean that we actually did a written report. However, I do have numbers for our warrant request. So we do a report, and then we submit a request to the prosecuting attorney's office for criminal charges. And the highest for 2023 was Pines. Out of those calls that we sent 7 over there to the prosecuting attorney's office.
So a relatively small share of the total call volume.
A lot of times we can curb the behavior by just having officer present, giving them a warning. Don't, like I said, don't send everything. We can prevent that. Like with the rest of the community, we have a lot of discretion. Most people respond to saying, do that. Legal. Can't do that. Okay, thank you. It's those individuals that we continuously run on that we say, you need to stop this. They refuse. They become belligerent. Or they try to claim that that area is theirs. Those are behaviors that we can't.
Other questions from commissioners? Go ahead, Heather.
The sense of urgency in this presentation and in the MOU is absolutely palpable, but the term emergency has completely disappeared out of here. We're still looking at overnight shelter, meaning we're not dealing with anything during the day, and we're not actually addressing how to help the real numbers of homeless we have, which is like 275 is what I've floated around. Maybe that's just in the summer. And we're not really proposing how to transition these overnight stays into the services that they need, unless the proposal is to, well, I sent you all an article that came out of the New York Times yesterday, an editorial piece about how Houston had slashed their homelessness by 60%. And they had 3 things that they did, but the most important one was to bring all the organizations that were involved in housing and mental health and veterans, all of their nonprofits and governmental organizations under one umbrella and organize them so that you had basically what we're talking about here, a quick response team that could help them get identification, get them into a system, find housing, find everything that they needed. I see that the QRTs, it sounds wonderful, and it sounds like you also have kind of, you're an umbrella for many different organizations. On Safe Harbor, I counted 41 organizations on Safe Harbor's website that can help around here in the city. But is that the proposal, that we are creating an umbrella? The police department is creating our action umbrella, or is it's a very expensive umbrella. You know, the police and fire take up 43% of our budget already, and we're adding.
I can tell you,
Proposing
just-
to add
yeah.
more.
Just with my discussions with Manager Vogel, She wants to do exactly what you're talking about. This is a start. We need assistance from all these other organizations, but you have to start somewhere. So
Well,
the
it
goal
could be
was to-
really much clearer in there.
Okay, yeah. And once again, this is a start. We thought if we had a memo of understanding with the four core groups, that could expand and bring in all these other agencies, because you're right, it's an overwhelming problem. The county, the city, Safe Harbor are not going to solve this. We need a lot of other assistance, but you have to start somewhere. And she thought this was a way to at least get the dialogue started, start with those four organizations, and then expand beyond that.
I will also say from previous conversations going into back into 2023, the Coalition to End Homelessness also is a coalition of several of the groups. So you've got the QRT team, you've got the Coalition to End Homelessness, and you've got this kind of growing discussion group putting it all together. So you're right, it could be much more
Explicit
articulated.
about
Yes, that there is a stronger through line in this that might be articulated in what people are seeing here tonight, because that is the goal. If you look at it, there's the continuum of care, I believe is how they're referring to it, which is, how it should be working, and also something that can be looked at as this MOU discussion continues, and any kind of potential extra movement is defining more how when guests come to Safe Harbor being, I don't want to say interrogated, but being asked about their needs and connected to services, things like that. This is all open. I think one of the things that you've really hit on is this isn't just going to be, we're going to flip on the lights a couple extra nights. This is, if we're going to really look at this, it's going to be looking at the process as well. So I think you've asked good questions that maybe weren't emphasized as much here that I think have kind of been addressed, but there's certainly room for more of that conversation to happen, because it does need to happen.
Nonetheless,
Yeah.
the MOU made a commitment to open Safe Harbor this year, meaning May. Now, yes, it said right a commitment
It was
to
the goal
keep.
to move towards that, not that 100% was going to happen.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I saw. And
The
so
MOU
that brings up
doesn't commit the city to that at all. The MOU is a commitment to have discussions. There's no commitment in the MOU. I just want to say that for the public and for everybody to know that.
Well, we had a big discussion about this.
But the
last
MOU
month.
does not, it commits to having the discussion about whether to open Safe Harbor and then bring back a proposal to the city commission to decide if that's what this commission and the other partners want to do, but it's not a commitment to do that.
Well, I'm
And as
glad
we
to hear
saw in the
that.
presentation, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will immediately go to 12-month operation. We could decide, okay, we are extending the hours or the time of the year. For some of that, we could decide we are doing summer operations this summer, but not in subsequent summers.
Yeah. And I want to state once again, the Safe Harbor Board has not made a commitment to be open. They agreed to sign on the MOU. So they have done the same thing the city has done, but there's been no commitment on the Safe Harbor Board to say, yes, we're going to stay open all summer long. That discussion, they need to take place, but they want to know what the city's plans are. And so they did agree to sign the MOU, just like the city commission has agreed to sign an MOU. But there is no proposal this evening or coming forward to do this. There still has to be a much more dialogue and discussion among Safe Harbor, among the city, law enforcement, on how we're going to proceed. One of the options that is being discussed is, can we come up with an emergency plan for summer of 2024? Realizing that even if that happens, that is not going to solve it. It has to be a continuum of care, as was mentioned.
And I would just add too that was the reason why we brought it the memorandum of understanding, rather than having staff work on this behind the scenes and then just present us with, 2 meetings where we're presented with, we want to do this is how much it's going to cost. We're going to have just a couple of meetings and move through the process quickly. This was intended to have study sessions like this and larger, more in-depth conversations with the community at large. So I think Jackie had her hand.
I did. This is a question about timing. Mr. Janik has mentioned how ambitious this timetable would be for Safe Harbor, and I'm wondering what our confidence level is that public safety services and social services can likewise ramp up this fast. I am concerned at the reports that I get of deteriorating public safety and quality of life conditions in neighborhoods and businesses nearby, and I'd like to be sure what our approach is going to be to minimize that.
Maybe when you open up to the public, there's some people here from Safe Harbor, maybe they can address that issue. But I know it's been dialogue. Like I said, I've only been here short term. I've been to a couple of meetings, but I know a lot of dialogue has occurred on that topic to make sure that if it is, it's not as simple, just turn on the lights and say, we're going to be open now on May 16th. A lot of work has to take
understand
place,
that.
and so you're right.
My question is, how confident is the city of being able to provide their own services? Maybe Captain Richmond would like to
Yeah.
comment on that.
As far as our ability to address issues within the neighborhoods, the Pines and Safe Harbor, I feel very confident, even 3 down. Would it be easier if we were full staff? Yes. We would have dedicated officers in those areas. When I started in 2004, we had 5 community policing officers, 5 dedicated officers, 5 different sectors. of the community. We had 33 officers. Right now, if we're full staff, we have 32 officers. Can't tell me in 20-some years that call volume, society has changed, we're operating at less staff than we were 20 years. But I'm confident in my men and women of the Traverse City Police Department to address those. We had to address them last summer, 3 down. So my confidence is very high. We'll respond to calls. We will be out of our cars. We will be walking the neighborhoods. We will be going through the Pines to build that trust. Even though Krista Friesinski is not dedicated, she's still tied to the patrol division. She's been instructed to, when she's available, to go out, Pines, go to Safe Harbor. That's how we build trust with you, so that when we do get called out there, we can address them by name. Any of our officers know everybody out there. We can walk up there and say, hey, they'll have a conversation with us. A lot of them don't want to be there. That's just where they're at. A small percentage, just like a small percentage within our community, that causes the most problems. Small percentage within the people experiencing homelessness that cause most of the problems. We know all those people. And I just want to clarify one number, because one of the ways I ran the warrant request, there was 18 warrant requests out of there, a little higher than the number I gave, depending on how you run it.
One of the topics that was discussed at last week's meeting is the financial cost. Obviously, the financial model that Safe Harbor has does not have them open beyond May. And so there'll be significant cost, and where are those funds going to come from? And would the city be willing to make a commitment? So we don't have those answers. We can't tell you how much it would cost yet, but that's the dialogue that is occurring, trying to be proactive on those type of issues.
As far as the QRT, during those meetings, the confidentiality piece, law enforcement leaves the second half of that. Social worker, along with our primary partner, discuss individual and what they are experiencing, what they need to address the issue. Jen has really in the stigma of social work. She understands how it works, so understands how social work. She can communicate to both. Our officers have the confidence in her because they have gone to her, heard it, calls for service with it. So with the QRT, their goal is to reduce calls for service for us. I think that is working.
And please let me be clear, I'm a great advocate of QRT. I think your results are really impressive, and I appreciate that you've got, facts to support your results. They're all great things, and I want to see it expanded as fast as we can. I also want to be able to assure the neighborhoods and the businesses that are impacted that if we do something as aggressive as opening Safe Harbor this summer, that the city is prepared to step up and offer perhaps even an improved level of service. So,
One of the things that Manager Vogel would appreciate, and the members of the task force, is the questions just as you're asking, so we can address those up front and be prepared at our next meeting to try to address the questions, concerns that you have, that people have here. Because we want this to be an open process, and once again, there's some misperceptions that this is a done deal that was driven by Safe Harbor, and I just want to say once again, that's not the case, because they're getting a lot of flack. They had some inappropriate calls this weekend. Some of their staff was unfortunately probably harassed. There's a perception that they're pushing this, and that's not the case. I just want to make that clear for everyone, because I don't think everyone knows that. And it is a major commitment on their part to find staffing, to find volunteers to work during the summer months. A lot of people like to take the summers off, enjoy themselves, and so forth. And to get them to commit to working at Safe Harbor during June, July, and August, and have the staff there too, and the finances, it's a major task. But what are the options if that doesn't happen? If it's not open, if there's no other solutions, we're still going to have the people here. And they have to be dealt with one way or the other. So we're trying to be proactive versus reactive. I guess is the best way to put it.
Through our community policing efforts, we have really worked well with mental health, PS, Coalition, Goodwill, Ashley and Ryan are back there. Not alone in this. We have partners there to help us for them. The person for you, Brian Hannon. The best person for you is CMH. Not the end all. Ben kind of gives them, that's the best person. Subject.
Tim had his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I greatly appreciate what QRT has done and the success there, and the talk of on-ramps to needs for those experiencing homelessness. And I think it was touched on, again, this is what I was hearing, that our community's doing a very good job addressing the current need, but the longer-term need for more permanent housing, which is under your third item up there, and it was on several other slides as well. It's at the very end of your presentation as a 2028 goal for the Northwest Michigan Coalition to end homelessness. So as far as that permanent supportive housing, and you have some numbers there, do you have any numbers that have been shared with you as far as what we as a community need by 2028? Knowing it's not ever like, oh, that's enough, because we'll need more every year, but is there a goal by 2028 of how many additional units?
I think maybe someone on task force can answer that. I'm not a member of the task force, so honestly do not have the answer. I'm sure they discussed it, but there may be people in the audience that could answer once you open it up, but
Ashley.
I can't give you an answer to that.
Okay, thank
I
you.
don't want to make up a number.
No, that's fine, but I think
Yeah, but
that's
I
an
know
important
that's-
part of the conversation
yes,
is, because in a way, we're
Yeah.
treading water successfully and hopefully more successfully, but until we add more permanent supportive housing, we can't shrink the
As you can
numbers.
see, progress is being made, but
Right.
it's slow. It's slow. It's
Well, and
challenging.
hopefully when we get to our strategic plan and other things for this body, that it's not to discuss tonight, but that there will be support to invest in permanent supportive housing.
Absolutely. Heather had her hand.
yes, so the memorandum of understanding from January 9th does say that it commits the parties to continued collaboration to develop a proposed plan to keep Safe Harbor open for year-round overnight shelter effective in 2024. The planning department last week published a calendar, and on that calendar, starting on the 18th of February and running all the way to the end of April, they are looking at the special land use permit for Safe Harbor. So is the development of strategy to keep Safe Harbor open or provide shelter during this emergency shelter in the summertime happening in the Planning Commission?
I'm sorry, what's the last part? I missed the last part of your
Is the
question.
strategy for for keeping Safe Harbor open as an emergency shelter during summer 2024 happening at the Planning Commission level.
Okay, Sean, you want to address that? Our planning director is here.
John Winter, City Planning Director. The short answer is no. The Planning Commission does not make any SLUP decision. They only make a recommendation to this body. It is a process due to public hearing notices and requirements that they have to follow. It takes many months, as you noted in the calendar. So in order to possibly be prepared to switch to a full-time operation when it closes May 15th, they need to start that process now to put the option on the table. But that does not commit anything at this time. We're going through the mechanics. The Planning Commission will have a very narrow lens that they look at this issue through compared to the City Commission. They won't be looking at financing operations and stuff like that. They're really looking at the land use, the future land use map, the master plan, and things like that. So they're much more limited, but again, they're going to start exploring that topic potentially. It's one of the options that Chet mentioned. Another one is the City Commission has the ability to simply extend the operations without a new SLUP. So that's one part of the puzzle that will be discussed as well in the coming months, which is why the Planning Commission, City Commission are scheduled to have a joint meeting next Wednesday at 6 p.m. so that both bodies can speak together on this.
Thank you.
That could be a short term.
It'll be short.
Deadline date.
Mitch, did you have another?
Yeah, on the topic of permanent supportive housing, while it definitely is part of the process, and the key part, I can speak to why it is a slow process as a member of the Housing Commission that is directly operating Review Terrace and has been working with the pilots on the others, is that we can create units, but it's important for, to be fully supportive, those units to be mixed in with people of other income levels and other lifestyle backgrounds. If people have been homeless chronically, putting them all in a building together doesn't necessarily work towards getting people into the frame of mind of having a stable lifestyle. They may continue to operate as they had in the Pines or at Safe Harbor, but if you have a small percentage, like we've got 115 apartments at Riverview Terrace, and this is 12 units, then you're surrounded by people that have more lifestyle stability, that have maybe more developed social skills, that can help transition people from the lifestyle that they've had in the Pines or at Safe Harbor into one more suited towards reaching out and getting the rest of the support that they need so that they can move on with their lives.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that was raised by Commissioner Shaw, and I think that is the slogan or the mantra of the coalition is housing ends homelessness. And so just to kind of make it clear that what we're talking about here is one piece, but the whole goal is to have more housing, to get to that number of units that they've identified that could really end chronic homelessness in the city, and to create the services that get people in that direction. I will say, though, to Commissioner Warner's point, to a point, we are 8.61 miles. I looked it up specifically. Dallas is 384.9 miles, and Houston is 637.4 miles. So we're dealing with a lot less land to build on with it just being us. So to Commissioner Anderson's point and others, that I guess I'm kind of going to just throw out here to people out there in the development communities and out there doing these kind of projects. Oda Cooper's done several in this area. There's others. We need people who want to come here, and we need East Bay and Garfield and all our surrounding townships to be on board with it as well. So we can do what we can do here, but we also need some of these other projects to be outside of the city limits, because 9 miles, not even 8.5 basically, isn't going to create dozens and dozens of units. It's just not what we have available. So just throwing that out there, that the region's open for business, and we'd love to hear from our neighbors.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
We have homeless, we have the homelessness here because they don't have it out there. And we have the services here because we're the city. But the QRT can't deal with those people from Garfield, from Benzie from Leelanau, who are coming to Traverse City because we have the services. So we really, this needs to be a whole 10 county-wide coalition to work on housing, because we can't house everybody here, and the other services that they need.
Yes, and we certainly do have Housing North as part of Group 2, which is the 10 counties. So, Mitch, you had your hand up?
Yes. Not only are Dallas and Houston much larger, but they're in a different state, Texas, which has much more liberal, for lack of a better word, rules about municipal annexation, such that each of those cities represents a much larger share of their total metro area. Whereas Traverse City is 15,000 people that serves an area of 3 times that or greater. And as it stands right now, Garfield Township has taken more or less a zero tolerance approach to homelessness, where they had people that camped in other parts of the commons besides the Pines that are a little further away, that had been camping in the Borden River Valley, that had been near Goodwill Inn, and now those people have been pushed to the city. So this is a regional problem, though the city can work within its own 8.61 square miles. But we cannot control the destiny of the entire county, much less the region, as much as we might feel a strain.
Right, we are looking at through 2 lenses, what we can do and what we can try to bring others along. So, any other questions from, sure, go ahead.
I think this is a request, and the chief brought up in the previous comments about the Shell station on 8th Street. So a request of, I believe, Mr. Marentet is, for the next time this is in front of us, what options do we have as far as liquor license? I know in the past we've talked about more about bars that have caused trouble in the community as far as how they operate. So I have to believe there must be some options of what we as a community and as a city can do with the liquor license for that Shell station, to at least have the conversation with those owners.
Healthier drinking culture study.
Just
Any
a
other
comment about what Commissioner Shaw said, and she's absolutely correct. I was in Leelanau County for almost 11 years as an administrator, and I personally know of individuals that have strong roots to Leelanau County, but are in the Pines because of the services in Traverse City. But that's just my own personal experience. I assume that's happening in the region also, so I think you're very correct, because there are services and options here that simply are not in Leelanau County or in Benzie County or Kalkaska County, so they come to Traverse City.
Any other questions from commissioners? All right, I'm going to have Mr. Janik and Chief step away, and we'll open up for public comment in a moment here. So I will hand this over to Benjamin for public comment.
Yes, could we just ask for a show of hands of those who are planning to speak this evening? Okay, great. I just want to ask that folks, in order to expedite things and move public comment along, if you'd form a line behind the podium so there isn't a lag between folks walking up to the podium, we can keep things moving that way. So speakers that raised your hand, please head to the podium. And then I'll state the rules for public comment, which are to please indicate your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, or city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep. We ask that all language be respectful to everyone, and also so that there's an environment where everyone with various points of view on this topic feel comfortable speaking. We ask that there be absolutely no reaction whatsoever from members in the audience. We want everyone to feel comfortable speaking. So with that, would the first speaker please come to the podium? And again, everyone, please remember to line up for us. Thank you.
And an addendum to the usual instructions. This is a little bit different setting, so however it's most comfortable for you to leave to go back to your seat after you've spoken, please feel free. You don't have to worry about not stepping in front of a screen or not walking around us. Please
Just don't
access
fall
however you
over
need.
the wire.
Yeah, just watch the wire,
Right,
please.
yes. We don't want any casualties tonight, right? All right, thanks.
My name's Megan Wick, and I live at 436 Washington Street. I have 3 kids, ages 13, 9, and 5. The City Commission is currently examining whether Safe Harbor should be a year-round shelter in hopes that this will address the camping in the Pines. And I agree that an emergency shelter is absolutely critical to protecting the unhoused, but this alone is not a solution. And there's a lot of comments tonight about you're in talks or so-and-so's talking to this group. but I don't hear a concrete plan. And our neighborhood has seen the language used in the current MOU. It feels very much like empty promises. The same scenario was, an example is the language that was included in the special land use permit that's not in compliance. It's not being followed and it's not in compliance with the city code. So how are we to believe that this is actually going to be followed through with? I feel that you're shifting a problem from the Pines from one neighborhood to another, and it's not a solution. I think we can all do better. I think we can do better as a community. You're saying that you're trying to form a plan, but you're making a major change before that plan is in place. And there is such thing as different types of barriers for shelters. Safe Harbor has a lower barrier for people staying there. Goodwill Inn has criteria for screening who can stay there. I think it's time for the city to acknowledge that a low barrier shelter does not belong when individuals are battling substance abuse and severe mental illness, that it doesn't belong in a family neighborhood. And I want you to picture a neighborhood full of children. They're not at school, but they're home each day for summer break. And then think of just a handful of instances I'm going to highlight that have taken place during the winter months. An individual stabs someone at Safe Harbor. They're chased by police into the Boardman neighborhood. The police search backyards and find him hiding under my children's trampoline. Luckily, my family was inside eating dinner because it was during the colder months. My neighbor who watched a homeless man burn his dog with a cigarette because the dog was barking at him. My neighbor walking with his daughters, his youngest picks something off the ground and says, "Dad, what's this?" And it's a used hypodermic needle. My neighbor who had to call the police because someone was masturbating in the alley behind her house. And just last week, someone who was suspended from the library caused a disturbance. It required multiple police officers to handle the situation, and the person ended up attacking the police officer. So how do we expect our children to be safe? A low barrier shelter does not belong in the middle of a family neighborhood. We need to work together as a community to find a better location and a better solution for our homeless population. So please take that into consideration as you're formulating your plan. These issues need to be addressed intentionally and compassionately, focused on improving the outcomes of the individuals experiencing homelessness who are struggling with mental health and substance abuse. Earlier today, I sent the commission a letter signed by over 100 of our neighbors and businesses asking you to keep Safe Harbor a seasonal-only shelter for 2024 and develop a comprehensive plan. This allows time to develop a plan that will promote the safety, health, and well-being for everyone. Thank you.
I'm Derek Quinn. I live at 222 Boardman Avenue. I am a city resident, but here I'm the director of Jubilee House, a ministry of Grace Episcopal Church, and I want to make sure that the commission includes day shelter services as part of this discussion, partly because the population that's going to stay at Safe Harbor, especially if it is going to be open year-round, does have to move from Central Ed Methodist for breakfast to Jubilee House for our day shelter services, and then to Safe Harbor. And so we do need to coordinate as people move. So I realize that we are not a partner of this MOU, and I do expect that at some point we'll be invited into that conversation. But I do agree that we do need to have a bigger conversation about the knock-on effects of having Safe Harbor open for the summer, and ask the deeper question about what does day shelter service look like in addition to overnight shelter going forward, especially if we do have to look at a different location at ever in the future for overnight shelter services. Thank you.
Of course.
Hi, my name is Deborah Grates. I'm a city resident, but I'm going to be representing as my business address, 647 East 8th Street. I'm the president of the North Boardman Business District. Our group had a meeting. We didn't have an emergency meeting because of Safe Harbor. Actually, I'm speaking to a topic that has a overlap. We find that we want to support healthy drinking culture, and the Shell station in our business district does not do that. I'm thrilled to hear it mentioned here tonight. The Shell station is owned by a person in Ohio. Its registered agent is an attorney in Lambertville, Michigan. It caters to single-use alcohol. That is a complaint from the Boardman neighborhood as people transition through. We would very much appreciate a review of that. Specifically, safe and healthy drinking culture to us would mean something like Raduno being allowed to serve beer and wine during lunches. But as we aren't part of the DDA, that is not within reach. We don't have problems with Silver Spruce. We're looking at this specific problem and would appreciate help with it. The second issue that we see and agree upon amongst our group is a lack of trash cans. If the city would please provide city maintained trash cans, especially at the bus stops and those corners of high usage, we would very much appreciate it. I think I have 28 seconds left. As a personal note, as a resident of the Boardman neighborhood, something that came up tonight is cannabis. I haven't thought about this before, but I would like to share as a physician who specifically treats opioid use disorder, cannabis has no role in the treatment. And if Safe Harbor only expands, if zoning at some point looks at whether the Shell station would have a turnover to become a cannabis dispensary, I'm not sure that would have a lot of strength in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Holm, the Police Social Worker Coordinator for the Traverse City Police Department. I came up here to clarify some previously stated information. So I had said that 23 individuals through the QRT had obtained housing and 91% remained housed. I just want to say that that is in conjunction with the Coalition to End Homelessness. I don't give people housing. I have yet to find a housing tree. And so we work very closely with the Commission to End Homelessness. And my comment is that connections to the homeless response system remain vital. So to just have Safe Harbor open is a component of this, but it is absolutely crucial to be connected through NMCAA, through the homeless response system, to get connected to obtain housing to work towards that. The solution to homelessness is housing and providing support for individuals who need it, who get housing. So just maintaining that as the goal with Safe Harbor Shelter, being able to reduce unsheltered homelessness and hopefully cut down on death and loss that we see in the Pines related to a lack of appropriate shelters for folks.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Valley Ishmael, and I'm a freelance paralegal with the Grand Traverse Resource Center. My business is located on 8th Street inside the city limits, and there's a lot of people here tonight. And if I could just see by a show of hands, how many of y'all have experienced homelessness?
Ma'am, I just want to, I appreciate it, but please direct your comments to the commission rather than interacting with the audience. Thank you.
Well, that answers my question. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Joel Jolene. I live like somewhere near the Boardman Lake. I'm a resident here in Traverse City. I'm also a worker in Traverse City. I work downtown at a restaurant. I wanted to note that in all of this talk, we're talking kind of like, sounds like a bandage that we're putting on the problem. There's no talk of affordable housing. There's no talk about a livable wage. If you want to protect or stop homelessness, I think that is a broader issue. I think a lot of my fellow colleagues are extremely close to homelessness. A lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. It feels as though a lot of, and I see a lot of small business owners here as well, it feels like a lot of small business owners don't care about the people that they provide their work to or ability to work to. I'll tell you a story. My coworker the other week, we had a meeting. She was told that if she's not strong enough to work in a restaurant, that she should go and find another job and that she's replaceable. She has 2 children. She's currently dealing with cancer, living paycheck to paycheck. And that's just one of the many, many examples of a lot of my friends in the service industry, and that's what they deal with. So if you want to stop homelessness, I think we need to refocus on affordable housing, maybe some rent caps, maybe some higher wages in town too. I think if you ask your employees or people that you know where they live, you'll note that they live probably 30 minutes to an hour outside of town. Not everyone, like no one can afford to live here. It's impossible to find affordable housing. So yeah, if you want to protect your kids, let's focus on the issue of them not becoming homeless when they try to work in Traverse City as well. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything. Take care.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm Roger Gerstel. I live at 7229 East Shore Road out on Old Mission. I work in town. I'm a family physician. I work at the Traverse Health Clinic. I'm the medical director of outreach there, which mostly involves working with the homeless. I've worked with the homeless community for many years, also as just a citizen volunteering at Safe Harbor, and even before there was the building with the Safe Harbor organization when it was still operating in the churches. Based on those years, my impression is that a housed person is a healthier person, and we see that so clearly in this community. Dan's house was such strong evidence for the contribution of that to those folks' health. A housed person is also a safer person to those that they are around, their neighbors, the neighborhood they find themselves in. What comes with housing, and I understand that we're just talking about a year-round overnight shelter, not permanent supportive housing, which of course is needed too. But with that stability comes security and the ability to access resources, making their way towards some health, towards some progress with regards to their mental illness and substance use disorder if they have those things. So I'm all in favor of the stability that this would bring.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Hamilton. I'm a resident at 221 Boardman. First, thank you all for putting this session together. I want to thank my neighbors for joining. I think it's important that all stakeholders be part of this conversation. And there are I think there are a lot more questions than there are answers. But one thing I want to highlight as we look to, and I'm not going to use the Band-Aid metaphor anymore because I think it's beyond a Band-Aid. What I find and what I see, and I've studied the 990s, I've studied the mission, I've studied the SLUP, I've studied this MOU presentation prior to coming. And the two things that I keep coming to is there are two missing links. And they've been mentioned, particularly Commissioner Shaw highlighted that there seems to be the missing link of, one, the shortage of day programs, but what are the operational procedures that if Safe Harbor is going to be open year-round, and they do have a noble mission, and they kind of have the hedgehog concept going on. They're good at beds and meals, but they also say that they're a point of entry, and that point of entry should be to a systematic process to access for the services that lead to housing. And that's where I think that we keep dancing around that. And those are the questions that keep getting raised. And I think that those questions need to be addressed, the plan on the procedure, so that Safe Harbor could be set up for success if we are going to expand their operations in their time. And I think that there are three options, and I think number 3 needs to be considered heavily. Not to say that we can't get to 1 or 2, but 2024, it's February 12th of 2024. I don't know. I've worked in nonprofit. I'm a nonprofit executive. I don't know how a nonprofit that's volunteer-based could put themselves in a position to successfully service these folks beyond the meals and the beds. And are they going to have exceeded demand? They're already at capacity now. And if the goal is to shift the Pines, they have 90 beds. They have 90 people there now. So those are just, again, I don't have the answers. My recommendation is those to really think about the holistic operational plan, so that if we are going to use Safe Harbor as that point of entry, that there is a system and tracking. Because one thing that they do not say in their 990 or how many people have been housed as a result of Safe Harbor. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Hello, my name is Betsy Corbett, and I live at 428 Washington Street with my husband and 3 young children. I'm asking for you to pause before a decision is made regarding Safe Harbor becoming a year-round shelter. While I understand the pressing challenges faced at the Pines, I strongly believe that establishing a year-round shelter in a downtown historic area bustling with young families is the best path forward. We owe it to both our homeless population and our community to seek out other options. As a compassionate member of this community, I genuinely want to work towards finding a better solution while also providing safety to all of the community members. The Boardman neighborhood witnesses a constant influx of Safe Harbor residents loitering, rummaging through alleys, yelling at children, needles on the playground, trespassing, and lots of other destructive behavior. This situation has only worsened over time. On a personal note, I've encountered deeply unsettling incidents, such as finding trespassers passed out in my front yard and witnessing police search for an individual in my backyard who was involved in a stabbing at Safe Harbor. The police knocked on our door in the middle of dinner to let us know they were going to search our backyard. Our young children ran to the window to look. It was very upsetting. The police did find the man hiding under our neighbor's trampoline, but this experience has still stuck with my young children. Unfortunately, I fear we will have many more of these experiences, as we have already felt an increase in negative activity. A year-round, no-barrier shelter simply doesn't belong in the heart of a family neighbor. It is not a good decision. We must unite as a community to find a more suitable location and comprehensive solution for all. I am willing to pull up my sleeves and help. These challenges demand a deliberate and compassionate approach with a focus on improving outcomes for those experiencing homelessness, mental health issues, or substance abuse. I believe that within this room, there are talented individuals, including all of you, who are willing to collaborate and find a better way forward. As a taxpayer and neighbor to Safe Harbor, I am asking the City Commission to maintain Safe Harbor as a seasonal emergency-only shelter for 2024. Please don't rush to a decision. Instead, let's take the time needed to develop a plan to promote the well-being of everyone involved and also to allow us directly impacted to have a voice in the matter and a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
My name is Crystal Brick Roush, and I live at 109 6th Street with my two kids, one of which is here tonight, and my husband. I'm fifth generation Traverse City, but recently moved back here after being gone for about 20 years. We intentionally moved to downtown Traverse after living in many cities throughout this country. We moved downtown because of the vibrance, beauty, character, and safety that Traverse offers. I have seen the robust and thriving city evolve. Families are moving into these old historic homes and choosing to raise their children downtown. That was not always the case of my youth. We cannot be closed-minded to the integrity of maintaining this history and character, but also providing help for those who find themselves homeless. This is a complicated issue, and living in Central neighborhood and witnessing the Pine situation gives me a direct insight into the dangers of moving these disadvantaged group of individuals from one concentrated area to another. Boardman neighborhood is already disproportionately affected by these decisions. I ask that you give us, the community directly impacted by this, a voice and a say in what happens with Safe Harbor. Please slow this decision down so we can collectively come up with a safe and viable option for all those directly impacted. We are a progressive and kind community who looks out for one another, and we can find a better solution that is not short-sighted and maintains the integrity of the city we love. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Jerkowski. I live at 515 East State Street with my husband and two young daughters, ages 6 and 11. I'm here mainly for them. We've experienced a few different scenarios while living here during the winter time, including, I think a lot of them have been mentioned, but we've found needles actually under our pine trees in our front yard. We have had multiple instances where we've witnessed many fights that we had to kind of shift our kids to the other side of the sidewalk to kind of get around the situation. One of the more troubling situations that we came across is we had two different scenarios where my two daughters had comments made to them that were extremely inappropriate by members of the homeless community. And what we found is they were more in groups, and it was a situation where they made comments. My daughters felt uncomfortable. My husband felt very uncomfortable. And it was kind of almost this group almost laughing and thinking it was funny. Luckily, we were there as adults for both situations. My biggest concern is if this goes year-round and they're going to be here during the summertime when our kids are all home, active during the summer, riding bikes around the neighborhood in the park. A lot of times they set up lemonade stands at the edge of the sidewalks. And heaven forbid, we're not right out there to see some of the stuff that could potentially happen when we're not around, even though they're usually a group of the kids that are all together. My big ask is, and from what I've been told, and this could be wrong, but I have been told that, if there are sex offenders that are coming to Safe Harbor, they don't have to register, and a lot of times they're not known who they are, just to make sure that these type of individuals, there's some sort of tracking to who's in our neighborhood, because our kids are there and they matter. And I'm just very, very hopeful that the situation is looked at from all angles so that we can find a great solution, but ultimately the children that are extremely innocent aren't witnessing situations that could affect them long term. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kelly Clark, and I'm one of the family physicians that's part of the street outreach program. I don't live in the Traverse city limits, but I do work at Munson, and the clinic is within the city limits as well. And we participate in outreach activities in the Pines, at Safe Harbor, around town, and lots of the different areas where people live. And I'd like to just remind people that the majority of the people who are homeless here have grown up here. They are children other people have raised, and they lived here, they played on your football teams, they went to school with you, and things happened. And most of the people do not want to stay homeless. Offering a shelter, we have really great evidence in medical literature, is the same as medicine. It improves mortality, it improves safety, it improves economics and financial spending in the hospitals and in the city and in the police force. What we have here is a very creative situation and progressive relationship with the police department that is not seen in other cities in the state of Michigan. We've been to some conferences with other outreach groups across Michigan, and some of the things that happen between police and homelessness is horrific. And I feel like we should be really proud that we're trying a multifaceted approach to make this work. Is it perfect? No. But is the initiation of shelter something that gives people a bridge to services? And does that happen at Safe Harbor? 100%, and I can say that because I do that. So yes, there is food, there is a shower there, but there is also connection to medical services, and there's a connection to the other things that people need to get out of homelessness and to be healthier and to save lives. So I would just say that I advocate for shelter. I advocate for a very thoughtful and progressive plan to include the concerns of the neighborhood to make sure that that is valued in the decision making. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, yes, Tommy Corbett, 428 Washington Street. First, thanks for having this. Really do appreciate your commitment to making our city better. We moved to Traverse City because it's an incredible place to raise a family. We wanted to live downtown where we could walk, we could visit parks, where our kids could play with their neighbors and run down to their cousin's house on the next block. I'm sorry to say that our neighborhood does not feel like the same place it did when we moved. Knowing a little bit about the meeting tonight, my 11-year-old daughter wrote a letter for us to share. I'm not going to share exactly the whole letter, but here's the gist. When we moved several years ago, around the time Safe Harbor opened, she would recognize a lot of people from Safe Harbor walking around the block, and she was heartbroken. They didn't have a place to have a home like she did. It was very loving. It was very kind. She was proud of our town for providing shelter and helping people to get on their feet. But now she says it's scary. She doesn't recognize most of the people. They're loud, they aren't kind, and they yell on the street. Obviously, that's not everybody. This is just her perception. She doesn't know all the stories that we know, the stories that have been shared between neighbors and in these meetings. But she can feel it. She can feel that it's changed this year, and she needs to keep her guard up. She's worried about running down to her friend's house, and she's worried about her little brothers playing outside. It's devastating to hear that your kids are scared in their own yard. They second guess going outside because who is outside their front door or in the alley when they take out the trash. To me, the solutions presented seem a little bit out of touch with what will happen if we open it up for the whole year. I know we're all trying to do the best thing for all the people involved and for our city. And I know it's a difficult issue that I certainly do not fully comprehend. This feels like we're moving a big issue from one town location to another without addressing the real underlying issues. And the move seems to be happening at a rapid rate. I feel an additional patrol officer or changing the safe harbor release time to not match up with the kids' bus pickup will not help our kids feel safe. At the end of the day, a large homeless shelter housing many often desperate people or intoxicated people should not be located in a family neighborhood. I'm asking you today to not make Safe Harbor a year-round shelter so we can really assess the options and the impacts this move will have on our neighborhood and our city. We live in a very caring and loving community, and the members of that community can really solve issues. I just ask that you work with us to make a better solution.
Corbett,
We
thank
really
you.
want to help.
Thank
Thanks.
you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Justin Kinsella, and I am a resident here. I'm 19 years old and have recently experienced homelessness. I realize that it's scary getting into Safe Harbor or any homeless shelter knowing that life isn't the same anymore. And without Safe Harbor, I wouldn't have been able to find any of the resources that I need to be able to find shelter or housing again. And without Safe Harbor, I probably would have been sleeping out in the cold and the freezing weather, because Goodwill Inn takes months with waiting list, and without the proper setup, I couldn't pitch a tent out in the Pines either. So the situation was pretty rough. I was very lucky to be able to find a place at Safe Harbor, and I feel like having it around yearly can help people like me who might only be homeless for a week, so that they can pick up themselves and find a plan that they can move on forward from that point, because not everybody at Safe Harbor is able to pick themselves up from the bootstraps and build a life for them. Some people have very serious mental disabilities, physical disabilities, or anything of the likes that can prevent them from doing so. I didn't really plan much more of a speech, but that's everything that I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cyrus Gamey. I'm going to speak on behalf of my profession and workplace. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer at the Traverse Health Clinic. I work alongside other medical professionals, mental health professionals there, and a big part of what we do is caring for those with various disadvantages, including significantly the unhoused population. I'm not going to repeat the points made by my colleagues who have already spoken, but I will throw my full support and emphasis behind what they have shared. I also want to be very clear about my feelings about certain aspects of this dialogue, in that the shelter is not, the concept of opening a shelter for year-round overnight shelter is not a be-all, end-all point. It is a piece of a more complex systems approach to the housing and homelessness issue, and I think taking positions that look at the shelter in and of itself as, you know, missing the point or being inadequate is myopic and short-sighted, because that cannot be the ultimate solution. It has to be a housing issue, and as has been brought up by others, having a shelter functioning that can provide some security and stability gives a point of grounding and some kind of foundation to work from. As you know, we have heard, have that point of stability can make all the difference. I also want to highlight the fact that, there's concerns about people moving to the area and what the communities have become and how the neighborhoods may have changed. I also have heard comments shared about, the cost of housing, the affordability of housing, especially how that's affected folks who work in the service industry. I'll highlight as well that this affects people who work in healthcare, people who work as nurses and other ancillary and support staff have a really hard time affording housing, and they have to travel long ways to provide care for all of us who are privileged to live in the area or in the surrounding neighborhoods. So it's a larger issue that than just, what's been talked about today. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bob Brick. I live at 830 Birchwood Avenue, Traverse City. I own properties near 8th Street, and I have 9 grandchildren that live within a quarter of a mile of the homeless shelter. A couple of them are here tonight, and I appreciate them being here. I grew up in the corner of State and Railroad, Traverse City, Michigan. It was across the street from the railroad tracks, and that's where all the homeless people used to parade into town when I was a kid. Our phone number, or our address, was written on the railroad tracks as a place where the homeless knew they could go and get a sandwich. We've had a huge part of our family's involvement in the mental handicapped arena of housing for people with disabilities. 50 years ago, when the state hospital closed, we were going to have several hundred residents homeless come onto the streets of Traverse City. My mother went to a commission just like this and said, what is the city going to do with this? And they didn't do anything. 50 years. So she went out on her own and raised money to buy 5 houses and run them as a nonprofit for 80-some residents who normally would have been homeless to have a place to live and learn independent life skills. How to cook, how to do your laundry, how to shop, how to get a job, we helped them get a job, to interact them with this social community with tickets to the shows or tickets to the beach bums or whatever it might have been. We're socially engaging them in the community. We have a mental health crisis, and we're giving a Band-Aid or lip service to that. This is not going to fix this. This is a funnel of which people are trying to decide to pour everybody into so they can filter into town where the services are there. But it's more than community-wide. You just can't take 5 counties and form them into the only homeless shelter in 5 counties. You've got to provide something. So I've been in the real estate business for 50 years. I've sold hundreds of houses in that neighborhood. They're all wondering what's going to happen to their property values, what's going to happen to their neighborhood. So it's a tough problem. People are emotionally all infected by this. But if we don't, the issue is not affordable housing. That is not the issue. You cannot build a house or an apartment with a furnace and a window and a bedroom and a bathroom and a kitchen any cheaper. It's by code. It's got to be done this way. If you're not going to subsidize it, it can't get built. And when you take 28 cents of every dollar raised in rent goes to pay property taxes in the city of Traverse City, because it's non-homestead, it's investment property, the developers can't do it. So you're losing.
Mr. Brick, thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Instead of winning. Thank you.
Hi, I live at 955 Woodmere Avenue. I have a couple things I just want to add to this. I see both sides of this, but I'm just wondering if we could possibly have the shelter open for maybe a couple hours a day where there could be services, there could be outreach, MMUs, whatever, so that people who are experiencing homelessness know when to go, just like they know when to go to Jubilee, just like they know when to come to Safe Harbor. So I'm just wondering if that might help, because a lot of people might not even want to take advantage of the emergency services. A lot of the people that experience homelessness are being seen by PCPs, mental health therapists, and so we're giving them the services, when we see them, if they decide to show up. So I'm just kind of putting that out there. And living on Woodmere Ave, I was told by the previous chief, O'Brien, that I am at the heroin hub. I am at the hub of where people do drugs, and I have found my own syringes. So it's not just in Washington Street or over by the Safe Harbor. So I wanted to just let you know that, that it, you know, people do kind of branch out, especially around the Boardman Lake during the summer. So I don't know if there would be a huge influx, you know, but I think for services, if they just keep knowing that we have services, and when they're feeling ready to do it, then we are there for them. But there are eyes on these beautiful souls. I've been to the Pines. I don't know if a lot of people have. It's very serene, actually. It's very clean, most of it. So I know I pick up trash all the time on Woodmere Ave and across the street. But that's my community. Like, I'm also the eyes in my area, because when I hear a voice, when I'm looking, I know what cars are around. So I don't know if maybe we all just kind of do a collaborative, you're watching my kids for a couple hours, I watch your kids for a couple hours, there's always somebody, because it is 2024, there aren't a lot of predators out there. It doesn't mean that there are people who are homeless. I also wanted to say about the influx in the summer with people coming around from all over the world that are walking past your kids with their lemonade stands. We don't know what they're on. We don't know what their background is either. So I just, you know, we got, what, 1 million people coming for Cherry Fest? I just, you know, I see everybody's sides, but I don't know, just and maybe educating the kids in school. Hey, this is, you know, just like online safety and safe body boundaries and all of that. Like, why can't we have maybe some people who experience homelessness come in and talk?
Thank you for your comments. If you're willing, it's not required, but would you provide your name?
Yeah, Sarah Roddery.
Thank you.
Therapist at.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda Budka, 601 Washington. My point is more about how this has all been brought up to us in the neighborhood and to everyone around here. It instantly becomes unsettling to hear that it might be going, the shelter might be open full-time starting in the summer. And we had discussed that many years ago when the shelter was being open, and we're assured that was not in the plan. But I think what bothers me the most, besides all of that, is the lack of unpreparedness. We're sitting here, and they're saying Safe Harbor doesn't know how they're going to handle it, and the police have an idea, and everybody has an idea. I don't know if you guys are thinking about your summer plans. They want to open May. I don't have my tickets for our trip in June, but I'm just 2 people. That's what bothers me. We have the neighborhoods going to have a lot of influx from the Boardman, the whole, not Boardman, Garfield closing and everything. We have a lot of changes there. We have the Blue Angels. We have all the people coming. And now we have the shelter open, and they're not really sure how they can handle it yet. And I know people can get a lot done in a short time, but that really makes me unsettled about this whole. There doesn't seem like there's a firm plan. And this is a study session. We should be a little further along. Thank you.
My name is Scott Wick. I live at 436 Washington Street. I'm a proud resident, a father, and a downtown Traverse City-based business owner. Just recently, you all voted to sign an MOU. You clearly wanted us to believe that this was the start of a conversation. Yet in the same MOU, you have already signaled your proposed solution. The city of Traverse City is trying to solve a complex regional issue. We are serving 5 or more counties. What do you think our small community could do to bear this enormous burden? Should our city manager, at a minimum, be approaching neighborhood counties and cities, asking them also to be sitting at this table, bringing input, bringing resources to the meeting? Our local officials spent more time discussing dispensary locations than we did talking about where we would put our homeless neighbors. Changing Safe Harbor from a seasonal emergency cold weather shelter to a year-round solution is a major change for this neighborhood. It's one that Safe Harbor itself has said it's not prepared to take on. Let's all just take a deep breath. and slow down for a minute. Can we understand the problem before we jump to a premature solution? Believe it or not, there may be more ideas. There may be more money. There may be more support. We have a caring community, but we also can care about everyone in the community at the same time. Thank you.
Hi, my name is BJ Brick. I live at in the Boardman neighborhood. I'm also a business owner here in Traverse City. A few of my family members have come up and spoken, but collectively we've been engaged in mental health and frankly potential homeless population since the state hospital closed. I had a relative that was housed there. Traverse City's always been carrying the burden of a larger region's homeless. So it's not new to me that this conversation is happening. I just disagree in some of the beliefs about how it's getting executed. And the concern that I have is really concentration more than anything. Location obviously affects me. It's in my backyard, so it probably doesn't lend as much weight to this conversation. But frankly, even at the Pines or anywhere that there is a congregation of people and young families and kids living, it's just not the right path, in my opinion. I think that Safe Harbor is a regional organization, yet it's literally in a residential area in downtown Traverse City. I would think that there's a conversation that could be had to find other locations that won't have as great of an impact to very many small kids that made a decision to move there, spent countless dollars moving back to Traverse City, figuring out where they wanted to live. When you then make a decision to go someplace, then things are adjusted, and it's a little bit trickier to realize that the impact that this could go on. I believe that shelters are needed. I think that it's absolutely something that needs to be discussed and figured out. And I think that that Safe Harbor is an incredible organization. I volunteered there when it was at the churches. My fear, though, is just the concentration in the location. And that's what I'm hopeful that the dialogue that we're having here on all sides, we're all aware that it's a problem. Homelessness is a huge thing that weighs on all of our minds. We all have friends and family that, I think that point was made, and it's true. I know friends and family. I grew up here, and seeing them go through hard times is just awful. And taking the time and effort to engage and be and sit and listen means the world. But having them excluded from the community is not the problem, or is the problem. Having everybody in one spot, and this is probably the first conversation and a path forward that we all.
Thank you for your comment.
I'm sorry, but thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Derek Elvin. I live at 439 Webster Street. I just wanted to say that I know this is a very complex issue, and there are many nuances that kind of embody this entire process here, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate the safety aspect of most of this. I feel that the problem is that we are having a concentration of people that are going to be moving from the Pines over to the Safe Harbor area. I know that the focus in the past couple months has been on the Pines, and that kind of, once the trees were kind of lopped down and the exposure to the community kind of opened their eyes to that area, that was the focus. And I feel like that burden has been shifted onto the Boardman neighborhood a little bit. I've had some incidences with my children at the bus stops of individuals coming up and approaching us in inappropriate manners. I just wanted to say that I felt like we were moving to downtown Traverse City to be in a nice, safe community. I felt that way typically up until the last couple months. I've had some very unfortunate encounters with individuals, and I know that that is not a majority of the people that are seeking shelter at these individual locations, but there are problems that need to be addressed. I feel that there might The shelter itself might benefit from something such as they call a wet policy in other areas. I've worked in ERs throughout the state, and they have homeless shelters that require individuals to take breathalyzers or to take a drug test to get inside. And I'm not sure that those things are in place right now at the current facility over here in the Boardman area. Just want to kind of express my concerns for those things. I think that might be something that would help maybe negate some of the negative things that have been happening, and kind of seeing the intoxicated individuals in the general area is just the increase in concern that I had. It has nothing to do with the individuals that are trying to better themselves and have been down on hard times. It's the individuals that are chronically being repeat offenders in the given area and keep coming back and forth and causing most of the stir. I feel that those individuals are not trying to take advantage of the systems that are being set in place, and just wanted to kind of express my concern for those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Klepper, city business owner at 642 Railroad Place and a board member of the North Boardman Lake Business District. I want to thank everyone for your public service and your efforts to create more housing options in our area, while also looking to work collaboratively with other government entities and local organizations to provide services and shelter to the unhoused in our community. I'm here tonight to continue my participation in the conversation that started decades ago and will obviously continue after tonight. We must continue to work together as a community in any way that we can, whether it be volunteering time or financial support for the organizations that are helping assist the unhoused on a daily basis, participating in local civic engagement like we are tonight, keeping an open mind to all solutions that are presented and considering the rationale behind them. This, like so many issues facing us today, requires us to keep learning and listening in order to make the most informed decisions possible. Also, we need to continually reach out to our state and national representatives so that they don't lose focus of the importance of access to health care, mental health services, addiction treatment, subsidized housing, and education, just to name a few. We must make sure that our funding priorities support these goals. But ultimately, we have to start by supporting each other. Try to help your family, your friends, and coworkers when they are struggling. Ultimately, words of compassion are inspirational, but acts of compassion improve the lives of the people in our community and make this an even better place for us all to live. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Emily Cashel, and I live at 715 Webster Street, and I care for my dad at 500 Webster. And I've been in Traverse City my whole life. Did I hear that Jubilee House was not invited to the table yet for a discussion? If that's not evidence of really poor planning, I don't know what is. I feel like there are a lot of opportunities here to serve our homeless population and our disadvantaged community members, whether it be by way of mental illness or economical issues. And if we're absorbing a 10-county coalition's mission, I really feel strongly that we should be including other counties in this big plan. To me, it feels like, oh my gosh, there's an emergency, let's throw a benefit. How are we going to pay for it? I don't know. Hopefully grant funding will be there. Don't have the budget for it now, but I think it might be there. Okay, do we have the staff? Nope, we're short. But I think we're doing a good job with what we have. However, the people are saying that that's not in alignment with what we're experiencing. I was walking my dog the other day in the evening, and I was walking by a neighbor, and it was after dark, and I was like, oh, hi there, and she screamed at the top of her lungs. I spooked her so bad. It was really sad. I've had someone from Safe Harbor come into my home and follow my 9-year-old daughter into our house all the way in. Luckily, her teenage sister was there and asked him to leave. I called the police. The police showed up. God bless our police department. I have the utmost respect for them. My daughter is inspired to go into law enforcement one day. But this police officer did not write down our report. He said, this happens a lot. If no one was hurt, let's call it a wash. I got a busy day. So please understand these are my experiences. I think that if we know that creating more housing in the surrounding areas is a solution that will work and tackle a big part of the problem, why don't we slow down and focus on that as well as just allocating funds in a state of panic and in a heated, polarized, who's going to win this thing. There's a lot of data out there. I've heard from scientists in our neighborhood that are like, oh, let's collect the data. I know that we can figure out a plan that works for people, that everybody's happy with, that we all feel safe with. So let's please thank you for hearing our voices and taking time to work on a solution that we're all behind as the city, because we are a welcoming, awesome city. And we just need to really be heard through this process and safe in it, and for the long term, for the sustainability of our mission here.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Crothers, 218 West 11th Street. I'm also the chair of Dan's House. I was also the mayor when we worked with Safe Harbor to create this warming shelter. We knew this wasn't going to be easy. We knew it was going to be challenging, and we knew that we were going to have issues in the future. And that's why we're here today, to work on these challenges with the city, with Safe Harbor, with all the agencies that are out there working together to make this a reality of helping people that need the help the most. I live on 11th Street. I'm very familiar with the Pines. I used to recreate there quite a bit. I've been told more recently not to go back in there. I've volunteered for cleanups. It's a mess. I'm also the chair of Dan's House. We house 8 of the most challenging individuals that live in this community. Our guys have been on the streets for 10 years, and they're dual diagnosed with chronic use disorder. But we do know that once they're housed, they get better. They're not going to be perfect, but they get better. I know we're talking about affordable housing, but I don't think this is what we're talking about at this meeting. We're not talking about affordable housing. We're talking about housing or keeping the homeless from freezing to death and providing a place for them to be while we work on housing. I agree with what's been said with many people here, that the region needs to be part of this. We have metro townships, we have several counties that are pushing everybody to Traverse City. The services are here. We need them to come to the table, work with us, and not only just to plan this, but to help finance it. The city should not have to go it alone. And I do remember originally when we worked with Safe Harbor, part of the plan was to provide support services along with the housing, the warming shelter, to have caseworkers, to have housing specialists there. I don't know if that's really happened. That's something we need to work with. We have agencies in this room that can help with that. We also sold at a very low rate a lot next to Safe Harbor with the idea that they were going to build some sort of transitional supportive housing. At this point, I think we should encourage Safe Harbor to give that lot back to the city, and maybe the city work on an RFP to put it out there for some developer to come in and work together with the city and other housing people to maybe build some transitional housing with support services. It's not going to be huge, it's not going to be major, but that's what the original plan was. So maybe that's something we can work as well. I didn't see it in the plan. I saw other housing opportunities that we've done, but this is an opportunity. We did it with Woda Cooper across the way, with Ruth Park for more affordable housing, which they spent a lot of money on that lot. We sold, I think, this lot for around $50,000. So maybe Safe Harbor might want to give it back. And we maintain that lot. They're not paying taxes on that. I mean, we still use it and maintain it as a city. So that might be an opportunity for us. But thank you for having this discussion. Thank you for including the neighborhoods. I understand that my neighborhood's been suffering for quite some time. Walk through the Pines. I mean, it's dangerous, but it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Hi, Richard Robbins, live at, actually the president of the Condo Association of Willow Cove. And this has been very eye-opening for me. So for everyone's participation as well as the council, it's been a very good session for me. Seek to understand before being understood, right? So we all have to understand these problems. My suspicion is our wonderful counties that are contiguous to us are just running with pocketbooks to us to help us out with this. Well, it's not the case. And there's no leverage to them to bring us money. If we talk about the fact that the county, we should be working and partnering, but the fact is money kind of talks, and they're getting a sweet deal because they're homeless are coming here. And I don't see how the city council has any leverage. I mean, you can work at them, and I hope you guys can help them see the light that our problem is also their problem. But my sense is they're not going to come to the table with a whole lot of money because it's not their problem. It just moves to the other county. The thing that I think that was very powerful I heard today is all of us would really appreciate a housing option for people to help them when they really are in difficulty. And we heard one today. It was a tremendous story. But the challenge is, it's those people that have mental illness and have drug addiction that are really difficult cases we have to address. And with this $1.5 billion we have in the opioid funding at the state level, my question to the council is, do we have anyone that's aggressively representing this region in Lansing in talking to them about an innovative way to put together housing and treatment in a site that's like the Commons, but not obviously as big, but something like that on a regional basis, and use that opioid funding? That's a lot of money. For not a whole lot of that, we can come up with a permanent solution for those issues with the real dangerous situations we have and people that cause problems. So my question, that's a question to the board, and if you need somebody to be involved in that, I'd be happy to step up, because I think this is what we have to do, is we have to have representation as a region to go get the type of funding we need to address the dangerous aspect, but to also preserve the positive aspect of Safe Harbor.
Thank you for your comments.
So, thank you.
Rick Buckhalter, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. I have to tell you, I'm quite discouraged about what I'm seeing here tonight, even though I appreciate the people's comments. Since this was first proposed around 2016-17, the neighbors were already saying what you hear them saying tonight, and 5 or 6 years has gone by, and absolutely nothing has improved. The claims of, we're going to get them housed, if they're mentally ill, we're going to get them help, if they're drug users, we're going to get them off the drugs, if they're alcoholics, we're going to cure them. Something's a big failure, but the government seems to talk their way around that. And when you see people have things like memorandum of understandings, remember back, that was the basis of the Fish Patch lawsuit. That's where it all started. And it's in the wrong hands, it's a tool against the wishes of the neighborhoods. So use great caution when they give you all the assurances that it's just okay, because it won't be. Secondly, the city attorney said that you can't remove the people from the Pines because of recent federal court decisions. I would challenge that, because that is city parkland deeded by the state. The city has ordinances where the police are to remove people who are camping on city parks. And if you can put parkland under the heading of, under the umbrella of parks, then you have the right to remove them. I'm not saying it's nice or a good idea. I'm just saying challenge that argument. The biggest thing I'd like to point out in a minute is, having experience with this sort of thing, when you have a complex issue that hasn't been solved since 2017, what's that, 5, 6, 7 years, why in the world would you go back to the exact same people that have been in charge of dealing with the problem and have been total failures? I mean, why would you do that? A better solution would be to get well-educated businessmen who in their work life are trained at identifying and working with complex problems and breaking them down into workable size components. And the entire time all this has been going on, it's been one broad umbrella, homeless, drugs, alcoholics, whatever, and you can't work with that. There's no leverage to solve any of the problems, therefore none of them have been solved. So my suggestion would be to appoint a citizen committee to work their way through the problems and give recommendations to the city commission exclusive of this memorandum of understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Last call, any other further public comment? Seeing none, first I wanted to thank all of you for sitting here through this discussion, for everyone who got up and spoke, and those who sat through to hear everybody who spoke. I think it was commented on many times, and I reiterated that we really do appreciate everyone's voice who's come here and the way that everyone is communicating. It was mentioned a few times that there's a lot of questions, that there's still not a firm plan, and this is an update meeting, a study session. We are not going to be rushing to bring anything for a vote next week or 2 weeks from now. There will probably be more meetings like this too, where we're going to maybe have some more answers, see if there are more questions. Everything that was mentioned today that we haven't asked yet or that maybe wasn't included, I know there were several questions both from the commission and the public about process and procedure at Safe Harbor and things about like release times and what kind of information there is about that. I think that can be gathered so that we all have that information in the future as well. Amongst other things, staff's been furiously taking notes. This will be reviewed as well. So I just wanted to reassure everybody that this is not the last chance for anybody to speak, that this isn't going to rush into movement right after. This was just the first step of an update to find out where we need to provide more information, where there might be problems that we haven't seen, and continue to have the conversation. It might be, as was pointed out, we don't have the money to do this right now. It might be that this isn't feasible to do in the next few months. It might be it can be done through the summer to see how it goes. There are some other choices out there than just, boy, we're just going to fast track this and have it done in a couple of months. And we sat here for 2 hours to just whittle our thumbs and rush a process. That's not the case. We want to have this conversation with the public and we want to hear from you all. So I wanted to add that comment and reassure everyone right now. I will also open up real quickly for commissioners. Does anybody have any final questions they'd like to have the staff consider or comments of something? Yes, Heather.
I just wonder who is actually working on this plan?
Quite a bit of the staff, Lauren. I don't.
Right. So the city manager has pulled together a team, including probably most of the department heads, and then we're working with the partners in the coalition, the police department, QRT, which the plan is to include and bring in the other partners as we go through these discussions. These issues are raised, and then we can reach out to the subject matter experts in the community that can bring to the table the expertise that we need to have.
But at this point, it's just the city plus Safe Harbor.
And the coalition.
And we asked for the participation of the county.
And we're waiting to hear back.
And that would be the other point that I meant to have, and I had a note. The 3 county commissioners represent the city, because the way the city is sliced up. We have no impetus, it was correctly made a point during public comment. The city has no impetus to force anyone to join us in any of this, but the issue does come home to roost here where we have the services. You all in this room, whether you live in the city or not, if you live in the county, are represented by county commissioners. That is the first very accessible way to encourage them to enter into the memorandum of understanding, to be part of this conversation. There have been a couple things that were mentioned about forcing people or about how housing can work. That's a state and federal issue, as was mentioned. Please keep the conversation going at the state and federal level with your representatives as well. But for right now, these are the conversations we're having, and the county, we'd love them to be part of it, and we are all represented by county representatives. So I hope that people will also use their voices to email and call and encourage that participation as well. Okay, we're going to take a quick break here in case some of you don't for some reason want to sit around and hear about our policies regarding appointments on boards. You can feel free to leave right now. I imagine there'll be a few of you, so we'll give you a moment. If by chance there are students here that are waiting for signatures, I know that's this time of the year, please feel free to come up to us and get signatures, but I don't know that they're running. Sorry to push on the spot like that, but I'm glad to see you.
I was going to stand up and wait until it comes out.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm in the meeting. No, but they were generous. Yeah, so I was. Yeah, 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 I was.
Right?
But it's relevant because like from Sarah, we got
We should let Amy.
I know, we're kind of asking you to we're asking you to go against the flow, but
That's okay.
yeah, Tim's long arm can help us with that.
three applicants. They're all.
Oh, yeah, so now we have to show. So can we take the can down and vote on it?
Just like we should be able to have whoever staff.
Yeah.
Any concerns with any of these? No, they're all good.
Yeah, I think that's 50%
Thank you so much.
Just as a sidebar, all of our neighborhood went asking them.
Chet was there.
Okay, well.
Okay, I'll let
The allegation you did.
And the truth is, this could be solved by people not the narrow.
We need housing too. No, it has to be just, but
I need some, a leaf, and some ice.
No, it's fine. That's different. We could get a units.
Everything of it that I could find. And they make some wild promises about what they were going to be able to do.
Well, I live a block on Station Street.
Between
No, and I'm not just listening, but I'm with you, I want to hear more about it, like, for sure.
They had transformed 50 individuals.
All right, everybody, let's give up 2 more minutes to refill your water bottle or anything, and we'll come back for the last bit here.
I know my anecdote is George got a house 2 years down the street from me.
No, you're fine. We're texting. Okay, boss, I can't listen anymore. I'm on vacation.
So I know
He's on vacation.
Yeah,
Good
if
for
he's
him.
watching the meeting.
Good for him.
The whole purpose of this was to cut down on staffing.
on volunteer staff, isn't that when they finally got like? Oh, I thought they really had any professional. No, I don't recall.
The number of staff required during the overnight hours would be reduced to 1 volunteer. They went through shift by shift, right? Net impact was. But it makes me wonder, did they ever fill on any of them?
Yeah, my neighbor brought me a lazy boy footage that her parents had that they didn't need. Yeah, that's like that's when I kind of knew that I was going to have to have surgery. Because after I heard it, I was Googling it. That's what you do. And you should. But it was like the main complaint if you're torn is that you can't sleep. You can't lay down and sleep. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what's happening. So I kind of had a bad gut feeling. Even before they told me.
I'm gonna bring.
I just stood up, just stretching my legs.
In a minute.
Your head's taller than mine. Just stretching.
You're the one I always have to raise.
Is that a King and I reference?
Oh no.
What? She said my head is higher than yours. No.
All right, we're gonna start the meeting in a minute here. I think we're missing one commissioner.
It's always so cold in here.
Yeah, I never.
And you're never cold, but
Oh, you were.
at the vent, it's just blowing on us.
Wait.
I don't know. Have I taken over?
All right, I'm going to call the meeting back to order, please. And we'll continue now with a discussion of the City Commission's policy regarding appointments to boards and committees. And Mr. Janik, you're on that too, but I know Benjamin's involved.
I believe the clerk is going to handle it.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, so thank you. This is really a follow-up to the January study session that you had regarding your, one of the topics was your rules. And at that meeting, there were some questions that were brought up regarding the policy that sets out the framework for how you make appointments to boards and committees. And I included a memo in your packet. And there's a few areas of the policy that I think you particularly had some interest in discussing. One of them is that the policy, and as I'll certainly state this, it's your policy, you can change it so you can make whatever tweaks you'd like as long as they're consistent with legal requirements. And so the policy currently requires that for anyone to be considered for appointment, including an incumbent to be reappointed, that they have to be interviewed. The only exception is if the person that's up for consideration has been interviewed in the last year for that given board. So there's that requirement. There's also the requirement that if you want to allow the interviewees to interview virtually, the commission has to, of course, convene physically, that it's an all or nothing, that you can't allow some to interview virtually and some to interview in person. And so I wanted to first open up that section of the policy for any feedback or questions that the commission has, because I think that's one of the key areas. And I also wanted to mention that we've got Rebecca Adler here just listening in. She's the new operations coordinator from my team, moved up from the licensing election specialist role, and she's going to be serving as the primary point person for supporting the city commission on board and committee appointments. Yeah.
So I'll open for comments from anybody.
Yeah, and I shared with the mayor during our couple-minute downtime. We have a current example, and so I don't know the answer, but I'll toss out a hypothetical after I explain the example. The Coast Guard committee ad hoc, or committee ad hoc, whatever. There's 3 candidates. They're all incumbents for 3 positions. And so in that case, it seems like if the staff liaison express to those of us on the ad hoc that the staff liaison has no concerns with these 3 incumbents, and if the 3 of us could anonymously, so we don't break rules, anonymously share back to the clerk's office that we're fine just reappointing these 3, and maybe it has to be unanimous, all 3 of us say that as individuals, that could be allowed, that then it's our recommendation that these 3 be reappointed. So that's just a hypothetical, and maybe that doesn't happen again for several years, I don't know, but just to go through the motion of interviewing 3 people, and there's only 3 spots, and they're all incumbents anyhow, so they're qualified, and as long as the staff liaison doesn't have concerns, something like that.
Sure, I mean, that's, we could make that adjustment, like something like that in the policy. I'll just share that one of the reasons for including that, I'm not attached to this, but just one of the reasons was having the opportunity to check in with those folks. They've served for a little while. It's an opportunity to revisit. That's the reason, I believe, from my recollection, that was put in there.
I agree, it was. Yeah.
Well, I was going to, that particular, all of the seats being held by incumbents and only having the number of seats as you have the same number of people may be rare, but I've only served for 2 years, and I think there's been numerous occasions where there's been 1 seat and there was an incumbent, and we still had to go through the process of interviewing that person, and your staff has had to go through the process of trying to coordinate all of the schedules of all of the people involved with that, and so we know that the city's done a great job of trying to encourage participation in our boards and committees. The City Academy toward that end, Bay Brief, getting people sharing that information more widely. It also seems as though we continue to struggle, and if we have X number of seats and X number of incumbents, I don't think there's a compelling reason to put that level of workload onto the team to reappoint people who are interested in continuing to serve, especially some of these boards have quite a high learning curve for getting up to speed on them. So that's just in the 2 years I've served, that's the perspective I've had, is that often we are interviewing incumbents for an incumbent for an opening. And it takes a lot of time for a lot of people to coordinate that.
If I could chime in as somebody who was here when we created this policy originally. I think both these suggestions and the conversation around it is good. I kind of was thinking, though, to that point of checking in, I don't think we have to do it every single time, but we do sometimes end up with people who are on boards for 15 years or 20 years. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's a couple of terms and they bow out. Sometimes they bow out and come back in. So maybe looking at some kind of a, incumbent interest, one time, not re-interviewed, renewal kind of thing, but also not just giving it a free space every time that person reapplies. A, for checking in, and also B, just for seeing where they're at currently with the board and where that current commission is at and where other applicants might be at. So just kind of throwing in there that maybe it's not a all or nothing, that maybe there's a little bit of a kind of a renewal window, but that if meeting certain criteria would be allowed without an interview, but that maybe it's not just, endless. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'd say going on, it was the policy of the previous mayor to, if people had served their first term and were doing okay, to appoint them again, but beyond that, to re-examine the process. And though we can say that we are as objective as possible, we are a city commission that's made up of people, and each election there may be significant changes in the people that make up the city commission. Those people have different philosophies and policies that they might like to express on and viewpoints on a given board that they're appointing people to. So there could be change just in terms of what the interviewees would like in applicants from one interview pool and the next one 6 years down the road that a candidate for a 6-year term might face.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, as well as acknowledging that, as we've mentioned, some of these have longer learning curves and/or person's volunteering to spend time with our committees and boards, and unless there's a compelling reason not to reappoint them after one term, acknowledging that they've put that kind of work into the commission. Go ahead.
Would there be any value to finding a balance between fresh thinking and institutional knowledge, and saying, okay, you're appointed once and there are 2 subsequent automatic renewals of your appointment, and then you move on?
That's a good question. Are we statutorily not allowed to term limit people, as it were, or is that pretty open for interpretation, or does it depend on the board?
All the boards are different, so it depends on how they're created and where the appointment comes from. Sometimes it's a statute, sometimes it's something else. So we would have to look at that a little bit more closely.
That's a good idea, but we also might have
sometimes there are specific requirements for a member to serve on a board that it might be difficult to find somebody.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Like we've had that with architects on historical districts, I know. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a good conversation and great points being raised, but I was mostly just going for when there's same number of incumbent applicants as the open positions. When there's new people applying as well, I do support interviewing everybody, including the incumbents, just to see and make a real comparison, and so we're honest with ourselves and the public. But it's really the special case when there's only the number of incumbent applicants as there are open seats, that it feels like maybe there's a better use of everybody's time.
So that one feels like something we could itemize. I think maybe it sounds like there's some interest in having more of a discussion, or maybe are we allowed to do that here?
Yeah.
Officially in front of us? Of maybe some kind of an auto renew to acknowledge that people have spent time and effort on a position. You guys just had this with the 3 people coming up at once, but I feel like between resignations and people just choosing not to reapply and things like that, it doesn't feel, I don't feel like it's very often that we get 3 open seats, 3 incumbents, and 8 people waiting to be interviewed, and that's ever been set up as a scenario. But that's a point that is made by, maybe it's I don't want to get too much into over-regulating it, but maybe it's and there's no other applicants, right?
Yes.
So, aspect of it. Heather, did you raise your hand? I'm sorry. If not, sorry.
No.
You're in the corner of my eye, so I might have just been seeing movement over there.
Yeah, I'm just squirming around. I would have thought we were doing the tax assessment
interviews, and this is, we were talking about this. Here's a guy who's been on it for 10 years, you know, and then we have to make all these special plans to get him this interview because he got sick. But it turned out we learned something from that interview, which we never would have known, which was that the required 2-year follow-ups that you have to take to be on that board, and you get paid to be on that board, are always the beginner. It's just the same thing over and over again, starting at the beginning, just beginner 101. And he thought it was a shame not to be getting into some of the real details because things are really complicated, like up here. And he could really use a session where it was about the complicated, assessments in well-to-do neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have known that, and I wouldn't have been able to pass it on to you.
Yeah, that's a good, no, the check-in point is really good. So, I guess looking at this, I mean, I think definitely if we're like, no applicants, incumbents, I think we'd like to see that kind of a room in the,
policy. Yep,
I would maybe advocate from, I'm hearing from some people is maybe that's once, if the second time they come up, it's a similar situation, maybe there's some interviewing anyways just to check in, but.
We
I don't
could
know
just
what
leave it
everybody feels about
open.
that.
I mean, the way that I'm hearing it, and correct me if
Yeah.
you all feel differently, is that if there's 3 seats available, you only have 3 incumbents applying, that any member of the ad hoc committee could say, I want to do interviews, and that would trigger the requirement for an interview.
Okay, but it wouldn't be required.
It wouldn't be required. So then you can always analyze it by a situational sort of basis.
Could we build into that something to address that need for the check-in point for because one of the things that we often ask incumbents is that question about what feedback do you have for us?
Yeah.
What do you think we as a city commission need to know about the work your board or committee is doing? Is there a way to perhaps revise the application so that if it's an incumbent reapplying to gather that kind of information in that capacity?
I think that's a great idea.
I think that's a good idea, and as well as when we get the packets with everybody's, maybe there could be a notation of, like, these are 3 people who are up for reappointment and incumbents, 2 of which were automatically renewed last time. So that might also trigger the ad hoc to want to interview them. Filling out a form is good idea, I think in general, just have the information, but sometimes, as Heather said, you start talking and you glean more of that information too, so that at least the ad hoc would have that option. Any other suggestions on this part of the policy?
Well, I'll bring this up only because I've been confused by it personally, and that's the issue of residency. And certainly want everyone who reads this policy to know that you don't have to be a property owner. Renters are encouraged to apply, and if there were any ways to make the residency requirements clear and inclusive.
Sure.
Got it.
I'd be in
Yes.
favor of that.
We'll work on that. We can also adjust the application too to make it clear
sure.
there as well. Yeah.
Okay, very good one. So that was the interview. Does anybody want to weigh in on the virtual versus in person? I think we've all come through COVID probably since the last time anybody looked at this policy. Does anybody feel strongly about all or nothing, about not allowing it at all, or allowing for hybrid?
Personally, I'd be favorable to a hybrid approach where we prefer to interview in person, but there are definitely situations where somebody has COVID or somebody is out of town or is unavailable during our given window to show up in person, but would be available to interview virtually. For a number of these boards, they might only meet quarterly or otherwise infrequently, so being able to make yourself in person for an interview does not necessarily mean you,
Yeah, okay, that's a very good point. Yes, go ahead.
and I can say that although it's been frustratingly slow for me since I bring it up every time I did chat with our state rep, Betsy Kafia, earlier today, and there is expected to be movement later this session on open meeting reform that could allow a more virtual participation meeting to happen in this board and the boards that we appoint to.
Great, that's good to know.
I was just going to say, I would support a hybrid approach to interviews as long as it's not the panel style interview.
Yes.
That
Yeah,
I
we
don't
wouldn't do
know
that.
that we use that all that much anyway, but certainly unlevel playing field for the interviews.
Absolutely.
And we'd like to avoid that.
Yeah, so I think that maybe we could put that as a stipulation is that interviews can be done or in hybrid or however we want to express that. I guess that would be a question too of, I think we did try the panel and we had like 15 applications a couple of times I remember distinctly doing it for human rights a couple times.
Yes.
I don't know that they ever did another, but at the same time, and forgive me, we've done so many recently, I forget who I served with. I think it was Mitch and Tim on planning where we did 3 hours of interviews one afternoon and another hour, like 45 minutes another day to get people who couldn't make it. So do we want to specify one-on-one or one-to-one to make sure that's everybody's being evenly assessed throughout, or do we think that's overly prescriptive? Or say if it's hybrid, the condition is that every interview for that particular ad hoc must be one-on-one, so we're not putting people at the disadvantage like Jackie's.
Up to you. Yeah.
We don't want to have everybody sitting up there listening to everybody else, do we? Is that how you did it?
It was kind of almost like we actually kind of basically had a mini Human Rights Commission that met and talked about the issues back and forth up and down the row. So to that end, though, I think what we would be saying is if we are doing it hybrid or where some people might be in person or virtual, we want to make sure it's one-on-one interviews so somebody isn't sitting in a row with 5 people in person
Yes.
and 1 person on a computer.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I think that maybe just for that particular scenario, we could clarify that. Thinking for longevity, and we know what we're talking about, but 6 years from now, they might not.
This is an informational question. I know we're randomly picked. Our names come out of a hat or something
Yeah.
when you're choosing ad hocs. Does everybody get about the same number of ad hoc assignments?
That's what
or
we
is
try.
that
We have
part
a
of the process
spreadsheet that
you do?
might make a head spin,
Okay.
trying to keep track
That's
of all
okay.
this. But yes, to the greatest extent possible, would it pass a total mathematical analysis? No, but a logical one, yes.
Good
Yeah,
faith attempt.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
even
yeah.
Good way to put it.
even mathematically random things could end up with Commissioner
Yes.
Werner being 3 times more likely than I am.
I was gonna say, and we do see sometimes where it seems like, Commissioner, we're gonna pick on you because you're sitting right here and you're tall. That Commissioner Warner one night is on 3 of the 4 ad hocs, but then what you don't realize is the next month and a half, he might not be on any. And so, or 2 months. And so, yeah, I appreciate that question, and that's a good follow-up continuously to ask to make sure that it's kind of playing out well. So, okay, does everybody feel good with all of that? Does anybody want to contribute anything else about this or anything related to
Yeah,
this?
it's not directly in the ad hoc policy, but just in how the scheduling works. A little request that if we do have a longer period of interviews, that like 2-3 more hours, that there be a break of 10 minutes or whatever in the middle.
I think when we had that, though, we did get a whole half-hour break in there.
We
from
should
that.
try.
Yeah, that one, I had another panel that was
Okay.
long and did not have a break.
Okay, yeah, that's a good policy.
Yeah.
Let's follow labor laws. If we're all together for a few hours. Okay, anything else from anybody?
Well, I might just note that maybe it's not the length of the length of block of time, but the number of interviewees.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe no more than 3 before like a 10-minute break.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I step out of this?
Yeah.
Okay. I brought this up at the last meeting. It's not about the ad hocs, it's about the actual commissions. When I was on the planning commission, at regular meetings, we gave commission reports, just informal, verbal reports about what happened at the BZA or what happened at the Joint Commission or what happened wherever. And and I think that maybe a year and a half ago, we had a joint city commission, planning commission meeting talking about how we could better tell each other about what was going on. Well, if we're not having those those quick, informal catch-ups that the planning commission continues to do, then how would we ever know what's going on at the planning commission? How are you going to know what's happening at Brownfield? I mean, there's important stuff. And what's happening at the housing commission? I mean, why isn't the housing commission
This is a very
involved in
good
this?
point, and I think what we have typically done, and you're raising a good point because we haven't brought it back up in a while, is we've typically either had the person tell the mayor that they would like that space reserved for them during the report section, and or a lot of times commissioners have always put that just in the final comments. Just wanted to let everybody know that the Light Power met this week, and we're really excited because we finally got the money for the fiber project to go forward or something like that. The exception being that if it was coming to us anyways, we did the strategic plan and the budget's going to be coming to you. The budget's going to come to us, so we're going to see it. So those are always been the opportunities, and we can definitely continue to do that. We don't really take a moment for the reports because that is kind of the closing comment section is really what that's been kind of before in the past. We can reserve it with reports time though as well. So just let me know if you'd like that reserved for the reports.
It seems valuable to find out what's
Always
I
feel
don't
free
know
to
what's
share.
happening in human rights. I don't know what's, I mean, how would I ever know?
We have staff representation on human rights. So that's where, those reports are usually in the, or those meeting notes and reports are usually in the packets, correct?
Mhm.
From human rights where we don't have a rep, but where we do have commission representatives, certainly that's a great reminder to reiterate that commissioners can feel free to share out anything that they want people to know that's going on, discussions that are being had, or actions that haven't taken that they think the public would like to know.
But it's our initiative. It's
Yes.
not going to be encouraged.
Yes, you are representatives. It might be that for 2 months, Light and Power's been gathering information, and then there's going to be a great announcement that we have our strategic plan release, and which is on the horizon. I say ours. I'm not on it anymore. It was for 8 years, so it's a hard habit to break. So that I don't think we want to do enforced updates, but I think it's good to bring that point that when there is relevant information to share, please share it. So thank you for that. That's a good motion to bring up. Anything else? Keeping within these reports. I'm sure we could have a Festivus airing of the grievances one night, but let's not do that. Okay, seeing none, with that, we will go.
I've got one more thing. I just want to ask, I know there's not a magic solution here, but it is, as you know, you all have very busy schedules, and it's a lot to coordinate them, and I'm just wondering if there's a better way, an easier way to go about scheduling than what you've been experiencing. We've tried some different things with not universal success. So I'm just curious. I just wanted to ask you if there's a way that we can do scheduling that would make it easier, or does it seem like what we're doing is kind of what we've got?
Well, I had to figure it out. At first, I was just saying, yes, this all looks good in the future, and then I didn't write it down anywhere, and then I'm like,
Yes.
oh my gosh. I don't remember what I said the last time.
Yeah.
So now I pencil in these
And then you
these
end up scheduling
blocks of
something
time.
in a time that, yes, it was available for an ad hoc, but it's
But
also
not anymore,
available
yeah.
for something.
Yeah. Well, and
So-
I do, yeah.
So I got to
do know
figure it
staff.
out. I think it's working okay.
Yeah, staff does also double check to make sure they're not signing you up on 2 different ad hocs
Yes,
at the same
they
time.
told me that.
Go ahead,
Yes.
Jackie.
I know we use the Calendly.
Calendly, sometimes
Calendly.
Doodle.
Is there
Same
any
thing.
advantage to that versus just using Google? It's Find within our main city calendar.
You mean in terms of like you keeping your calendar updated, and then we could tell by looking at it if you're available? And that's a question if you're able to commit to that kind of maintenance of a calendar of the city.
My calendar would be really obnoxious for your staff to have to try to. I'm happy to look at it and figure where I can slot something in. I don't want to subject anyone else to that.
I also would argue that I'm not necessarily, I'm pretty open about it, but I also don't think it's something that I want on government computers of when and where I have my doctor's appointments and things like that too. So I appreciate that sentiment, and if Google had that option for us to be able to do something like Doodle as part of it, that would be great. Google developers that I'm sure are watching this at home. But other than that, I do appreciate that staff recently started sending us invites when they are confirmed. So I think that's the good thing to look for, and I appreciate that that's been out there and available to us. Do you have something to say?
I keep a paper calendar, so you're out of luck. Speaking of calendars, though, I don't know, is there any calendar for the city commission?
Nope.
I
Like
don't
there
know
was for
what's
a planning
happening
commission?
ever, except.
It's on the home page if you go to the iCompass.
Well, but it's only like a couple.
It's a month at a time usually.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks at a time.
Usually a couple of weeks out, and it's like, it fluctuates so much. Like, we're gonna have a staff meeting tomorrow to talk about next week's meetings, because it might even make more sense to not have your regular meeting on
Since
Tuesday
we're
and have
having
a
the joint
20-minute
on
special
Wednesday.
meeting right before the joint study session. We'll be reaching out to you on that, but
Yeah.
it just
So you
changes.
just always have to be nimble. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, I would
but
say too that-
Mondays, I'd plan on your Mondays. being-
Mondays, and then, whatever assignment you have. I will say that the requests for joint sessions the last few weeks have been very exceptional. There's definitely the most that requests I've had in a short period of time ever in 8 years. So I think you all are just unfortunately getting hit with this up front, and probably the next, 3.5 years will be pretty standard. Every once in a while something pops up. It's very rare that we have, 2 to 3 requests for joint sessions or anything exceptional like that. The only thing to note is what, the couple, and I think you guys usually send them out to us, the clerk's office does, is those couple times where your Monday becomes Tuesday because of a holiday.
Right.
Those always mess me up still. But other than that, count on Mondays, and then we cancel if it's a study session we don't need, or a meeting we're gonna combine, or fifth Mondays are always a freebie.
Or if there's an election the following day.
Yeah, and that, but we'll get notified of all of that, so.
But that 28th meeting has been
Yeah.
canceled, right?
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Right.
Because we do
erased
have an
that one.
official policy about elections. So yeah, you guys are, it's an excellent point that you all have been subjected to some odder calendar requests over the last couple of months compared to most commission schedules.
I don't know if this is possible or if this is just operator error. When I look at future meetings to come on the city website calendar, I can tell the day and the date. I can't tell it until the materials are issued.
And you're looking where when you're doing that?
Oh, I'm on the city website, and the meetings information function calendar that's there.
Yeah.
It is, I think, it's
Yeah.
for me, and maybe for people who are not on this board who might like to be able to.
Without opening the packet.
When
No,
the packet
yeah.
doesn't exist.
Yeah, when the packet.
Yeah, there's a couple of
Oh,
different
okay,
systems
right,
that
right.
talk to each
Yeah.
other, and I think it's a bridge issue, but we can take a look at it, for sure. I get your point. Yes, we'll look at it.
And yeah, there can be changes that rather than at its usual time, this meeting is shifted to a different time.
But
But
that-
I'm always
likely-
guessing, when will the DDA meet? Is it
9 a.m.
Oh,
on
so
Friday morning.
9 a.m.
Is it?
the third Friday, but the study sessions are usually at noon, and those are not always called, so that's why.
Yeah.
So, unlike Light and Power, where it's gonna be second Tuesday with the potential of fourth Tuesday. So that's not as regular with that one. So that is part of it too, is like every board kind of has some quirks. All right, well, given the hour, if we have some more thoughts, I'm sure Benjamin would be receptive to hearing them. We can always bring them back at another study session. And I will open it up for any final public comment. Would like to? Well, then with that, any final public comment from our commissioners?
The planning commission on the subject of meetings and calendars is shifting its meetings to 6 p.m., not 7 p.m.
As was mentioned at the top of the meeting. So yes, thank you for the reminder. And with that, I will adjourn. Thank you all for the hearty conversation.
I just realized I went
I noticed that there, and I was going to tell you, and then I was going to ask if that was intentional when we started the meeting. So I wrote this down throughout the conversation because I remember I sent you a text. Oh, I have a whole